Hello everyone, this is your friend Naruto Nexus 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto the Ultimate Sakura and Sasuke Romance in Her Experience Part 2. Sakura was beginning to feel a growing kinship with Tazuna and his family. While their house was far bigger than her apartment, it was undoubtedly shabby. The wood was old and worn and the house was very sparsely furnished. It was evident that while the family had space to spare, they didn't have too much else. Kakashi was set up in an open but almost completely empty room on the one spare futon the family could dig up. Are you alright, Kakashi-san? Tsunami, Tazuna's 28-year-old daughter asked. No, but I will be in about a week. When they saw that he was awake, his students rushed into the room. Sakura, very familiar with taking care of sick adults, gracefully settled herself at Kakashi's side while her teammates flopped down awkwardly a little further away. This was very out of their wheelhouse, they'd never had to look after a sick person before. Out of habit, Sakura placed her hand on Kakashi's forehead, checking for a fever. He seemed okay, other than extreme exhaustion. His lips looked rather dry though. She didn't process her teammates' eyes on her as she popped up and darted out of the room, returning fluidly to her place moments later with her canteen. She slid her arm under Kakashi's shoulders and gently propped him up a little, holding the canteen to his lips. Drink, sensei. That was a long battle coming out of a long journey. You're dehydrated and it'll slow down your recovery time. Sasuke watched the interaction with stoic fascination. The way the girl in front of him was acting, she seemed almost like an adult rather than a 12-year-old. It wasn't the first time he'd thought Sakura spoke more like a grown-up than a child. He'd meant what he said earlier. His pink-haired teammate was indeed like a walking encyclopedia. But books couldn't account for bedside manner, which Sakura seemed to have in spades, based on how she was handling Kakashi, the way she handled Naruto's hand, or even how she treated his arm during the bell test. Maybe it was a female thing. His mom had always been the one to take care of him when he was sick or look after his injuries. Itachi would check in on him, but it was his mother who did the most in those moments. But he knew plenty of girls who didn't seem capable of this, most of his fangirls for instance. He absently wondered where Sakura's maturity came from. Your Sharingan is incredibly powerful, sensei, but if it puts this much strain on your body, is it really worth it? Sakura lectured, putting the canteen to the side and easing Kakashi back down. Of course it's worth it, Sakura-chan. We won, you know, Naruto said, brightly. That's right, Tazuna added. You took down your strongest foe yet. We can probably relax for a little while. Sasuke watched as Sakura ran a hand through her long pink hair. He noticed she did that whenever she was anxious or something was on her mind. What's wrong? He asked her. Her jade eyes snapped to his in surprise and her cheeks colored a little. She always seemed so shocked that he'd talk to her. He guessed he couldn't blame her at first, given how he'd told she made him sick the first time he ever talked to her, but he thought she'd be used to it by now. They were teammates after all. It's just, I keep thinking about that masked boy. Sasuke ignored the weird needling feeling that shot through him. What about him? She felt her sensei's eye focus in on her as well. It's nothing really. I'm probably overthinking it. Just, his word choice was a bit strange. Kakashi's eye narrowed at his female student. He couldn't shake the feeling he'd overlooked something big. Something not good. Sakura had correctly figured out a lot thanks to analyzing word choice. She may have figured out what he was missing. What is it, Sakura? He prompted, struggling himself into a sitting position, despite Sakura's protests. As he was leaving, he said, your battle is over for now. Why for now? If Zabuza's dead, we won. Our battle is definitively over. His mission was to track and kill Zabuza. He shouldn't know anything about us and our mission, or about Tazuna-san being targeted. As far as he should have been concerned, that was our battle and it was over when Zabuza died. I don't know, Sakura-chan, don't you think that's overthinking it a bit? Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head. She turned to look away, embarrassed. I already told you I thought I was, she muttered, running her hand through her hair again. Kakashi's eyes shot open wide. That's what he'd missed. Sakura hadn't quite caught it, but she wasn't far off. No, she's not. That boy was a member of Hidden Mist Anbu. Part of an elite unit often codenamed the Undertaker Squad, because they dispose of corpses so thoroughly it's as if they never existed. Why do that? Naruto asked. Even after death, a shinobi's corpse might yield up secrets of the skills it's mastered, ingredients of any drugs, potions, or medical treatments the body consumed, even the aura of the chakras it was steeped in the ninja's native lands. It all becomes an open book. In the same way, when I die, if an enemy were to gain possession of my corpse, it would reveal all the anatomical idiosyncrasies unique to those who possess the Sharingan. In the worst case, the enemy might gain enough information to duplicate and master that power. Ninja corpses tell too many tales. Shinobi hunters, like that boy, specialize in tracking down and eliminating rogue ninja, then obliterating their remains. So Zabuza's corpse is going to be dismembered and destroyed. That's so creepy. She heard her internal voice finish, unable to shake the image of Zabuza's corpse chopped into pieces and stacked in a pile. I don't think it will be. Huh, but you just said, a hunter nin is supposed to dispose of the body on the spot. So what? Naruto asked. But this one didn't. Sasuke answered. This one took the body. Right. Normally a hunter nin would handle the body on site and just bring back the head for proof of mission success. Kakashi closed his eyes in thought. There's also the mystery of his weapon of choice. Senbon. Needles are also commonly used for acupuncture, which focuses our energy and tension points throughout the body. If one knew the spots well enough, they might be able to. She and Sasuke reached their conclusions at the same time. Both jolting in shock. No way, but that would mean. Yes. Zabuza's still alive. There was a beat of silence as his declaration sunk in, and then the explosion. What the heck are you talking about? Naruto yelled. How's that possible? You checked yourself. You said he was dead. Sakura added. I made sure of it. But a death-like trance could have created a very convincing illusion of the real thing. His lone eye glanced over at Sakura. Why are you so surprised? Isn't this what you suspected all along? Sakura shook her head. I thought maybe the masked boy also worked for Gato somehow, or knew something about the hit on Tazuna-san, but I didn't think he was Zabuza's accomplice, although, needles like that, if they hit a vital they could be deadly, but otherwise, they wouldn't cause mortal damage. Sasuke finished. That's right. As a member of corpse disposal, he'd have an intimate knowledge of human physiology. It would be simple for him to put someone in a near-death state. Given his choice of weapon, and that he moved the body instead of dealing with it on the spot, it suggests that the kid's objective was to put Zabuza in a death state while he rescued him. Things may be just the way they seem, but we need to consider the other possibility. Quote, aren't you just reading into this? Tazuna asked hopefully. It is a hunter's job to get rid of rogue ninja. Maybe. But ignoring something that smells fishy is a great first step to being caught completely unprepared. And preparation is a shinobi's most important skill. Besides, whether Zabuza is dead or alive, your enemy Gato may have more, even deadlier, ninja in his employ. He would have expected this to frighten his students, but Naruto was actually shivering with excitement. Sasuke's eyes held a gleam of challenge, and although Sakura looked rightfully anxious, there was also determination shining through it. Sensei, you talk about preparation, but you can't even move right now. What are you going to do? Sakura asked, voice laced with concern. He was already suffering from chakra exhaustion. He shouldn't be trying anything big right now. I'm going to increase your training schedule, Kakashi declared, his eye closing in a smile. Training schedule. Quote, Shanaru. What the hell is he trying to do? Get us killed. His damned Sharingan was barely enough and it left him incapacitated for a week. We're Genin. Does he really expect a little extra goddamn training to be enough? Quote, when I was caught, it was you three who rescued me. Sakura, your analysis of the situation, Sasuke and Naruto, your skill and teamwork. You three are all maturing, progressing rapidly, your powers growing exponentially, especially yours, Naruto. You've grown the most. The blonde gave a wide smile. Naruto has. Well, he's more grown up than he used to be, especially the way he handled that fight earlier. This is the same kid who hours ago threw a kunai at an empty bush to look cool. She couldn't argue with herself on that one. That being said, this training will be an interim thing only, to tide us over until I'm recovered enough to take over. Kakashi-sensei, if Zabuza's alive, how can we just train without knowing when he might come after us again? Quote, excellent question. Once a person has been placed in a death trance, it takes quite some time before the body recovers to its previous health. Zabuza was incredibly strong though, and if that boy has the medical knowledge to place him in a death trance, he might know ways to speed up the healing process. Sakura pointed out. That's a fair point. Left on its own, it would take a normal person placed in a death trance 2 weeks to a month to fully come out of it. Let's work under the assumption that we have half of the shorter time frame. Kakashi reasoned. So 1 week. Alright, so we train while we're waiting. Let's go. Naruto jumped up excitedly. Much to everyone's shock, so did Sakura, her hands on her hips glaring at her hyperactive blonde teammate. Absolutely not. Kakashi-sensei can barely move, he shouldn't even be sitting up right now. She yelled, tossing her teacher an irate glare. We can start training tomorrow, but Kakashi-sensei needs at the very least 12 hours of rest before that. And don't argue with me, sensei. You need to lie back down and get some rest. Take 3 sips of water every 15 minutes to rehydrate. I'll bring you some food a bit later. Everyone in the room stared at her in surprise. She'd just issued a command to her sensei, 14 years her senior, and her tone held so much authority that most of him didn't even question following her orders. But the small part of him that did wondered at how this 12-year-old, who frequently hesitated to voice her thoughts, and when she did they often came out laced with insecurity, could sound so confident. It was a situation any other genin would be ill at ease with, the knowledge that a powerful enemy was after them and their teacher incapacitated. It was clear from their distance and awkwardness that the boys had no idea how to handle someone severely weakened. Of course, the boys were all alone and Sakura wasn't. She must be working from the example her mother set, but still. Sasuke wouldn't show it, but he was baffled. This girl had always been incredibly respectful of authority. For as much as she lectured Naruto about being a dumb ass, or even the very rare occasions where she chided him, she'd never once raised her voice or issued an order to their teacher. On top of that, her tone had been not only confident, but the words had come from her as if they were instinctual, this from the girl who overthought everything she ever said. Naruto felt something warm in his chest, the same way he had when she bandaged his hand, fed him during the bell test, and tuck up for him during their introductions. Honestly, even when she would lecture and yell at him, he felt that warmth. He'd had a crush on Sakura before because she was pretty, but now it was because he felt looked after and cared about when he was with her. Evidently it was just how she was, and it didn't matter that it wasn't directed at him in that moment. She was always so busy, rarely spending time with them outside their mandatory training time and missions, and always turning down team dinners. He frequently found himself wondering if she really cared about their team. If they mattered to her at all, the way all of them mattered to him, and Sasuke, but he knew the bastard would never admit it. So seeing her like this, caring so much for the well-being of her team members, made him feel a sense of elation. Sorry Sakura-chan, I got a bit excited. Of course we'll start tomorrow. Training while we wait. This'll be fun. It won't be fun for you. Everyone turned to look at the young boy standing by the opening. Who the heck are you? Inari. Where have you been? Tazuna asked excitedly, holding his arms open. Welcome home, Grandpa. The boy gave a somewhat lackluster greeting as he went to hug his grandpa. Inari. Greet our guests properly. Their esteemed ninja who brought your grandfather home safely. Tsunami scolded, standing in a very similar pose to the one Sakura had taken moments before. The boy glared at the three genin, examining them before turning to his mother. But, Mama, they're all gonna die. Listen, you little twerp, Naruto exploded. No one can beat Gato and his men. The boy stated. But Sakura didn't miss the defeated air around him. She recognized it clearly since it was something she actively had to combat every time she looked at her mom. You brat. Naruto exploded once again, but this time was held back by Sakura. Get it together, Naruto. He's just a little boy. Right. He grumbled. Hey, pay attention, little guy. My name's Uzumaki Naruto and I'm a superhero who will one day be the Hokage of the Leaf Village. Gato. You really expect me to be afraid of someone who sends others to do his work for him? Hero. Are you dumb? There's no such thing. What the? Sakura once again had to hold him back. I said quit it. Quote. If you don't want to die, go home now. The kid murmured, turning for the door to the hallway. Where are you off to, Inari? Tazuna asked. I'm going to watch the ocean from my room. The child slammed the sliding door shut behind him. Please forgive him, Tazuna sighed. Naruto, not being able to let this go, stormed out of the room. The room began to slowly empty out. Tazuna went to take a rest, and Tsunami went to cook dinner. Sakura helped ease Kakashi back down after giving him some more water. She ordered him once again to sleep, and regardless of his wishes, it didn't take long for exhaustion to pull him into unconsciousness. Once he was out, Sakura instinctually checked his forehead again, satisfied that there was no apparent fever. She turned to find Sasuke scrutinizing her, and her face immediately warmed. Something wrong? Sasuke's eyes narrowed more. She was back to insecurity again. How could this girl be so good at handling delicate situations, like their weakened sensei, and so unsure of herself otherwise? It was weird. If she could handle this with so much confidence, why was she always second-guessing herself? You're annoying. I'm annoying. Ah, come on. What did we do this time? Her own voice moped in her head. He watched as she deflated, feeling more annoyed. That hadn't been his intention. Why did his words mean so much to her anyways? There were moments where he saw similarities between his fangirl's behavior and Sakura's. The frequent blushing around him being the biggest, though there was also the honorific she applied to his name, and the occasional stuttering when he spoke to her. He'd observed her enough to know that she didn't react that way to any other guys. In those moments, he suspected she might like him, the way his fangirls claimed to. But she was more mature than his fangirls, she was more mature than most 16-year-olds, let alone 12, and she was frustratingly hard to read. She kept so much hidden. If she did like him, she was damn good at compartmentalizing, and based on his experience, no other girl their age was. Sasuke-kun, lift up your shirt. He couldn't hide the surprise from his voice. It had been such an abrupt order that seemed to come from nowhere. This was another one of her discrepancies. It was a very rare occasion when she didn't carefully censor every word that came out her mouth. And when those rare occasions happened, he was always thrown by how different her raw, unpolished thoughts were from what she shared with others. Despite the difference, it never felt fake. What she consciously revealed and what she accidentally spewed were both unquestionably Sakura, though how that as possible was beyond him. The only thing fake about her was the smile she frequently wore, and it was a convincing one. Sakura was very red and avoiding eye contact. When she spoke again, her voice was small. You got hit really hard earlier. You coughed up blood. I wanted to check on you then, but I didn't want to leave Tazuna-san or get in your or Naruto's way, and then afterwards, so much was going on and I didn't have a chance to. And even if I ask, you'll probably say you're fine, whether you are in tea, so, I thought I'd just check. Nice going. I made Sasuke-kun uncomfortable. He probably won't want me around anymore. It was a good choice. He's always telling you to say what you're thinking, and what you're thinking is you wanna see him with his shirt off. Quote. You know that's not it. Okay, maybe not entirely it, but you certainly wouldn't mind. Her inner voice was too loud and it was making her blush harder. She couldn't be around him like this. Abruptly, she stood up and crossed to their sensei, intent on checking on him. Really, she just needed to put some space between Sasuke and herself. She couldn't just leave it now. Not only would it invalidate everything she just told him, but he'd said it himself, she was as close to a doctor as the team had available. She couldn't just leave one of her teammates when they might be in pain. Especially not Sasuke. Her word choice had been a mistake, but she needed to see this through. She made her bed, she'd lay on it. But being that close to him made her head feel foggy. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. It was easier to talk now that she had her back to him, but you're the one who said I'm a walking encyclopedia. I might be able to help. I'll be quick about it, but I need to take a look. Honestly, it wasn't so much that Sasuke minded. He trusted her. Whatever the nature of her feelings were towards him, she wouldn't let it get in the way or cross any lines. He knew she was asking out of a place of concern. He just didn't want to deal with Naruto if the idiot walked in on them. Or if Kakashi woke up and saw them. Neither of them would let it go and it would get annoying. Be quick about it. Sakura turned in surprise. She hadn't expected him to agree so easily. She shifted over to where he sat, and he pulled up his shirt. It took a lot of effort, but Sakura managed to keep her focus on her task instead of his lean but well-muscled build. There was a lot of bruising, she just hoped it wasn't an indicator of internal bleeding. She dredged up every medical text she ever read and went through the checklist of possibilities she was aware of and knew how to check for. She pressed gently on and around the bruise, and was met with hard muscle. Her face flamed. That's good, that means there isn't any fluid buildup. We can likely rule out internal bleeding. Know what else is good? Sasuke's abs. Shut up. Are you in any pain when you inhale or move? No. Good. No broken ribs. She stared at the large purple bruise staining his pale skin. The only things I know how to check for are broken bones and internal bleeding, neither of which you show signs of. She pulled out her ointment and gently spread it over the bruise. Sasuke's eyes fell on the jar. I thought it was for cuts. She felt the vibrations of his voice through her fingers. Bruises, burns, and minor cuts. She responded, pulling away and capping the jar. Sasuke dropped his shirt back in place. An awkward tension filled the room as Sakura suddenly became aware of how hard her heart was pounding. Sasuke was staring at her intensely. For his part, he was curious as to how she learned to make such a useful multi-purpose ointment, one that was so effective. That surely couldn't have just come from a book. Had the apothecary taught her? That couldn't be it, otherwise he'd just make it himself instead of buying it from her. And why make it in the first place? She barely trained, what need did she have to develop such a product? Before he could voice any of these questions, Sakura suddenly sprung up from her spot, looking flushed. I should go help Tsunami-san with dinner, she said, running out of the room. Weird choice. Highly unnecessary. Helping Tezuna's family with household tasks wasn't part of their mission, but oh well. So much for asking her anything. The next day, Team 7 stood in the woods not too far from Tezuna's house. Kakashi stood facing them. He needed to lean his weight on a crutch, much to Sakura's chagrin. If he needed a crutch to stand, how could he effectively train them? So, our new training regiment begins today. Kakashi began. Naruto whooped loudly. But first, let's talk about the basis of your ninja powers. Chakra. Oh, right, what are those again? Sakura twitched. You call yourself a ninja? Did you sleep through every class you ever took? Why don't you say I got in some really high quality nap time? Kakashi sighed. Sakura, if you wouldn't mind. Right. Pay attention and try and learn something for once, Naruto. I'll try and keep this simple. Put simply, chakras are the energies required to perform any ninjutsu or genjutsu. These energies are made up of 1. Those of the body drawn from each and every one of the approximately 13 trillion cells believe to make up the human body, or 2. Those of the mental and spiritual energy acquired over the course of much training and experience. All shinobi arts and techniques are born from a combination of those 2 energies, mixed from the body and spirit in process known as chakra manipulation and focus. Through the weaving of hand signs. That's correct. Good to know Iruka-sensei taught some of his students well. Kakashi said with a pointed look at Naruto. Oh whatever. I don't do so good with long explanations, but if you just show me, my body can learn. Quote, if you wanna be Hokage so badly, then get used to long explanations, damn it. Sakura growled. Naruto's right, we already employ ninja arts and techniques. Sasuke stated. Wrong. None of you has full mastery of your chakra yet. Quote, what? Naruto shouted. He could make an army of shadow clones, how was that not full mastery of chakra? As Sakura said, manipulation of chakra refers to the summoning of physical and mental energy and combining them within your own body. Depending on which technique you want to use, the amount you'd need to put out would vary, as would the makeup of elements you'd need to combine. Right now, none of you are using your chakras effectively. No matter how much chakra you summon and manipulate, if you can't maintain your balance, your technique will at best be half as effective, and at worst won't work at all. And because of how quickly you burn through your energy, you not only lack the stamina for continuous battle, but you also develop significant vulnerabilities. So, what do we do? Naruto asked. You learn to control your body through the harshest of training. Harshest of training? Sakura didn't think Kakashi was in any state to be administering training like that. That's right. Tree climbing. His students' reactions were immediate. They all began talking at once. Just climbing trees. Is this some joke to him? How does that qualify as harsh training? Sasuke asked. That's a waste of time, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto shouted. This won't be ordinary tree climbing. You're not allowed to use your hands. That changed their minds. Wait. That sounds like fun. Naruto shouted. Sasuke's disgruntled expression changed to one of curiosity. How? Sakura asked. Watch and learn. His students watched with wide eyes as Kakashi walked up the side of the tree, completely parallel to the ground. He turned to address them again when he was standing upside down from a branch. Focus all the energy of your chakra to the soles of your feet and use that power to cling to the trunk. When you have full mastery over your chakras, this is the kind of thing you can accomplish. Quote, how will this make us stronger? Sasuke asked. It was more of a clarification than a challenge. Sasuke and Naruto were both used to offensive kinds of training, learning ninjutsu and taijutsu. To them, that was obvious strength training. Something more subtle like chakra control was far less obvious of a benefit to them. The point of this is to gain greater mastery of the chakras. To use no more than necessary, but maximize its effectiveness in where and how it's applied. That subtle control is the most crucial aspect of every jutsu and technique you'll ever apply. It's also the most difficult skill for a ninja to command. This exercise requires the most fine and delicate application of chakra imaginable. Especially since the bottom of the foot is one of the most difficult locations to manipulate energy from. In other words, if you can master the chakra control needed for this, no jutsu should be beyond your reach. In theory anyway, Kakashi explained tiredly. That satisfied Naruto and Sasuke. If they mastered this, they could learn any jutsu. That would clearly make them stronger. It will also help build up the stamina necessary to complete your task once your chakra has been focused. If you think this is hard, it's even more difficult to maintain your chakra while using a ninjutsu. In battle, circumstances are constantly changing. A true shinobi has to be able to manipulate and maintain chakras on the fly if they ever wish to prevail. The time you need to stand around to summon and control your chakra is a luxury you won't have. Kakashi threw 3 kunai at his students' feet. The only way you'll learn is by doing. Use the kunai to score the highest point you can climb. It'll serve as a reminder for later. Your goal is to make a higher mark each time you climb. I doubt any of you will reach the top on your first try. A running start will probably give you enough momentum for a good first effort. Choose your trees and go. No sweat. I could do this before breakfast. I am the fastest developing ninja on this team. Naruto cheered. Less talk, more climbing. Kakashi said with a bored tone. Sensei, is this the same technique Zabuza used to stand on water? Sakura asked, picking up her kunai and twirling it around her fingers in thought. They're similar and utilize the same theory, but that technique is harder, since the surface of water is constantly changing and your chakra output has T. Oh, match that, Kakashi answered. Now get climbing already. That gave me a hint. It's about matching the output of the surface. Since a tree is stagnant, my chakra output shouldn't fluctuate. So, all I really need to do is figure out and match the energy frequency of the surface and let that dictate my chakra usage. The three took a moment to concentrate their chakra, before charging at their trees. Kakashi watched as Sasuke managed to get maybe an eighth of the way up his tree before the bark fractured under his overuse of chakra, pushing him off. Naruto didn't even manage a successful step before falling. He hadn't applied enough chakra, so he didn't stick at all. It was about what Kakashi had expected. The second Sakura's foot made contact with the bark, she got a read on the tree's energy output against her own, and immediately scaled her to match it. Encouraged when she didn't immediately fall off, she kept going. It was surprisingly easy to maintain. It's kinda like dancing. The process felt a little like a pose she would often hold, on her toes with one leg up and back behind her and her arms up out in front of her. She reached the highest branch that would support her weight and stopped staring out. She could actually catch a view of the ocean from up here, and the wind in her hair made her feel so exhilarated and free, so different from how she felt at home. An honest laugh bubbled up inside her and she couldn't hold it back. She didn't want to. When was the last time she truly freely laughed? Kakashi's eyes shot up at the sound of melodic feminine laughter. He hadn't paid any attention to his female student. She was far weaker than the other two and had such a small amount of chakra at her disposal. Naruto and Sasuke on the other hand were untapped wells of energy, with the former having an even greater amount than the latter. Energy that would be invaluable if they could access it in the coming battle. But Sakura had shockingly made it all the way up the tree in her first attempt. That was an impressive amount of control to have for a fresh out of the academy genin, no matter how little chakra she possessed. Yet again, Kakashi found himself editing his earlier stance on her future as a ninja. Incredible. You go, Sakura-chan, Naruto called boisterously, though internally annoyed that he hadn't gotten it first. Sasuke looked up at Sakura, eyes narrowing. She barely trained at all, how could she be this good? It was impressive and annoying. He trained daily, why was he having so much trouble with this? Her laughter sounded so musical and full. It was his first time hearing it. Every other time she'd laughed it had been strained, tense, or fake. It soothed his growing frustration slightly. Kakashi decided to use this as motivation. The boys were competitive, after all. Well, now we know which of you three has the best chakra control. Our young lady, well, understanding the use of one's chakra and manipulating them successfully, is quite an achievement so far. Sakura is probably the one closest to overtaking our Hokage, despite all your boasts and aspirations, Naruto. The blonde's face fell into a pout. And the finest hope for the Uchiha clan doesn't seem that promising. Sasuke glared intensely. Why would you say that, geezer? Sasuke-kun's gonna hate me now. Naruto and Sasuke turned their glare on each other. They may not have been able to beat Sakura on this front, but they sure as hell wouldn't lose to each other. The two started to work their way up the tree with renewed vigor. I can't believe I beat them, although, now that I think about it, the minimal training I could do was more in this sort of vein, dancing while maintaining a henge, but I've completed this exercise and I actually have time to train, since I can't do anything for mom at the moment. Kakashi-sensei, she called. Her sensei looked away from the boy's progress and up at her. I've completed this exercise. Is there another I can do? Or some other kind of training? Kakashi considered her for a moment. She was right. She'd completed this kind of training in one shot. Clearly she could summon and maintain her chakra, sending it to one location. How about quickly sending it to multiple? The girl had said dancing was a hobby, right? She was plenty graceful. Next I want you to work on moving your chakra quickly through your body while maintaining it. Dance up and down the tree. Make sure you're constantly changing your point of contact or balance point. If you don't move your chakra quickly enough, or lose focus, you'll fall. Impulsively, Sakura ran a hand through her hair. She'd never danced in front of Naruto or Sasuke before, but it should be fine. They were too focused on getting up the tree and their own rivalry to pay too much attention to her. She gave an affirmative nod, and began on this new exercise. Of course, she wasn't aware that Sasuke somehow always managed to keep her in his periphery. Which was good, because if she knew, she'd probably feel too embarrassed to carry out this training, which was already proving to be much more difficult than simply running up had been. Even just going up on her toes required a change in her chakra allocation. Before, she'd kept her chakra evenly dispersed through the bottom of her feet, but in the same way her weight had to shift forward to hold her balance, so too did her chakra. A fact which she learned the hard way, after attempting to go on her toes and dropping a meter down the tree, barely catching herself with chakra-laden feet. After safely managing to go on her toes, and bring one of her legs up, she decided to attempt at spin. She hadn't accounted for her chakra reducing the friction of her shoes in the bark, resulting in her spinning faster and completing more rotations than she'd been prepared for. The dizziness and disorientation made her lose control of her chakra and she dropped again, only just managing to take control of her fall before she hit the ground. This was much harder than running up the tree. And she hadn't even shifted her point of contact yet. Is this what running up the tree is like for them? Shanaru, we're not quitting yet. I know. I'm finally able to do something, so I have to do it. I've never had the luxury of quitting just cause something's tough, so why start now? She took a deep breath, focused her chakra and started up the tree again. This time, instead of running, she used a complicated sequence of footwork and small hops, shifting from her full foot to her toes and back. Alternating feet and giving small kicks. Now prepared for the lack of friction, she managed a controlled single spin, and seeing as she was now halfway up the tree, she landed her spin and prepared to go directly into a cartwheel. Have to send chakra to my hands fast, and then back to my feet. It wasn't fast enough. There wasn't enough chakra in her hands to keep her stuck to the tree and she fell again. She landed in a graceful back handspring, but as she looked up at the tree, she felt her breath coming out hard. She was already tired. Not yet. I have to at least manage a change in contact points before I let myself take a break. She danced her way up the tree again, managing a double spin this time, but the results were no different when she went in for a cartwheel again. Why isn't it working? Maybe it's too big a jump. I'm not used to moving my chakra that fast. And even if we build up enough, we still have to match it to the surface's energy. That's too many steps. Why can't we just skip to the last one? We already know the surface's energy. That's not wrong. We don't need to amass and rescale, we already know how much is needed. That should cut down time. Sakura tried again. She still wasn't fast enough. She was closer though. A couple seconds after she began falling, she felt the correct amount of chakra reach her hands. She managed to catch herself on the tree, but the momentum of the fall made the bark rip at her hands and the pain broke her concentration. Ouch! Right before her chakra failed her, she pushed off the tree to give herself a more controlled descent. She landed and immediately sunk to her knees in exhaustion, still controlled and graceful, as years of dancing had ingrained in her. Her breath came out in rasps and her arms were shaking. She looked up at the boys, who were still going. They hadn't even reached a quarter of the way up the tree, but still they kept running at it, moving higher by centimeters, but still going. They should be expending more chakra than her, given that they weren't allocating it properly. Sure, they were breathing hard and their clothes were dirty, but they were still going. We're not done yet. Shanaru. She pushed herself up and managed a step before she sank to her knees again. Damn, how do they have so much energy? She watched Sasuke land, breathing heavy as he looked up at his tree. He stopped for a second and looked at her, keen eyes narrowing at her exhausted appearance. She felt the all too familiar self-loathing crawl up her throat and looked down at her torn-up hands. He always tells me I should train more, and he's right. And now when I'm handed the opportunity I can hardly handle an hour's worth of effort. Exclamation mark. Why am I so useless? I didn't do anything useful when Zabuza attacked and left it all to Sasuke-kun and Naruto. I'm so pathetic. I wouldn't want me as a teammate. I can't even help my own mother. I truly am useless. Quote. So what are you gonna do about it? Just sit here and whine. 'Cause that'll change oh so much. She looked up and her eyes locked directly with Sasuke's onyx ones. She couldn't read them, they were carefully blank, but she felt a wave of determination wash over her self-loathing. She wanted that boy to trust her. To believe in her. To want her on his team. He occasionally said things that made her believe that he did feel that way. She wanted him to continue feeling it, and would give him every reason she could to do so. She turned her eyes back to her tree. There isn't very much I'm able to do, which means I have to do what little I can, and work that much harder when I'm given the chance. She closed her eyes, brought her hands into a seal to focus her chakra, and took a deep breath. I don't have much chakra left, which means I have to be all the more careful about allocating it. I can't move it quickly enough to get it to my hands from my feet. But there are other points of contact I can use, and work my way up to my hands. Sakura took another deep breath and got to her feet. Steadying herself, she only sent her chakra to her feet once she made contact with the tree trunk, conserving as much as possible until the last minute. She danced her way halfway up the tree before spinning 6 times, holding her right leg straight up against her face. After completing her 6th rotation, she let herself fall forward into a split, concentrating her chakra all through her legs to hold herself in place. This is a waste. If I just concentrate my chakra into specific areas, I'll still stay in place without wasting as much. She focused her chakra specifically into the middle of her thighs and her ankles, instead of the entirety of her legs, giving her just a little more chakra and time to work with. She held the split for 7 seconds before gracefully swinging her back leg around and pivoting herself into a kneeling position, thrilled out how quickly she was able to bring her chakra to her left knee and right foot. She held that position for 5 seconds. Her chakra was almost gone. She had to dismount fast while she was still in control. She quickly tucked into a somersault, cutting off her chakra off, before refocusing it into her feet and to push off the trunk when they made contact with the bark again. She flipped gracefully through the air, landing lightly. Her legs buckled and she sunk to the ground. I did it. It wasn't my hands, but I sent my chakra to other contact points. Kakashi, who had long since walked down the tree and settled on the ground, found himself observing Sakura's training more than Naruto's and Sasuke's. To be fair, there wasn't much to see with them. Their rivalry and sense of competition kept them steadily improving, but the progress was slow. Creeping up centimeters at a time. And for the most part they kept making the same mistakes. Just barely past their highest mark, they'd lose the balance. Sasuke would apply a little too much chakra and rebound off, Naruto would apply too little and no longer stick. However, the exercise Sakura was doing was far more visually interesting. The girl was dancing after all. And she was quite good. He now understood why her reflexes were so quick and her movements so graceful. He'd never gotten a good look at Sakura's movements and fighting style before. Outside of mandatory team training sessions, she didn't give any time to training or sparring, a stark contrast from Sasuke and Naruto who practically lived on the training grounds. The level of body control and awareness she had was unusually high, and may have played a part in her chakra manipulation skill. What was particularly interesting to see was the way she self-evaluated and self-corrected. Each time she fell, it was because of a new problem. She didn't make the same mistake twice. After losing control of her spin and falling the first time, every spin after was carefully controlled. So much so that this last time she'd completed 6 rotations and flowed right out of it like it was the simplest thing in the world. When she began trying to shift her point of contact to her hands, he saw the way she kept fixing aspects she was struggling with, and that she had reached the conclusion that she needed to work her way up to that without a hint. But then she'd been able to focus her chakra to different points on each leg simultaneously. That wasn't something easily done. And she'd been able to analyze and correct all of that herself. He was also surprised by her determination. She wasn't as loud or in your face with it as Naruto, but her fighting spirit was truly formidable. She shouldn't have been able to manage that last pass at all with how low her chakra levels were. Not only had she, but it had been the one she completed the exercise with. Kakashi had changed his opinion of Sakura and her future as a ninja several times over, but he found himself deciding conclusively that Sakura had the potential to be an amazing shinobi. She didn't have the latent power her 2 teammates had, she might have a pathetically small amount of chakra in comparison, but between her analytical skill, memory, book smarts, reflexes, body awareness, and chakra control, she could become truly great. Take a break. Kakashi called to her when he saw her legs buckle beneath her. He noticed Sasuke had been watching her, but when he turned to look at the boy, he merely turned back to his tree and continued working his way up. Sakura dragged herself over to a tree near her sensei and leaned her back against it, breathing heavy. Kakashi handed her some water, and it took all her internal nagging to take a sip every 20 seconds instead of just gulping it down. That was impressive, Sakura. I didn't expect you to succeed in changing your contact point so quickly. Honestly, I didn't think you'd make it past spinning yet. Of course, I didn't know how skilled of a dancer you really were. I wasn't able to make my hands a contact point though, Sakura replied, studying her tree seriously. He'd picked up on it long ago that Sakura was incredibly hard on herself. Maybe not yet, but at the rate you're going, I wouldn't be shocked if you get it by the end of today. Or tomorrow morning. Do you know where you're running into trouble? Sakura nodded. He knew she did anyway. At first, I was trying to build up too much chakra and then match it to the surface's energy. That was too many steps. The surface isn't changing, so I don't need to rematch, when I already know how much I need. That takes out a step. But I'm still not moving my chakra fast enough. She took another sip of water. You'll get it. You've already analyzed the problem, so I'm sure you'll figure out a solution sooner than you think. Once you manage to switch your contact point between your feet and hands seamlessly, you'll have completed this training. If I complete this training, is there any other training I could do? When you complete it, he corrected, and not while I'm in this state. Besides, we still have a mission. Someone will have to stay with Tazuna-san. Gato still might send someone else after him. Sakura gave a tired nod as she watched the boys climb. Sasuke was beating Naruto at the moment, but the blonde was catching up. How do they do it? Kakashi could hear the admiration, frustration, and sadness in his student's tone. They have a lot of chakra. He answered honestly. She let out a sad sigh. He wanted to say something to console or encourage her, but he was never good with this kind of stuff. The pink-haired girl gave a dry smile and shook her head. Don't worry about it, sensei. Like you said, I have to get used to there being shinobi younger than me and stronger than you. Conversing with Sakura was strange. It felt more like speaking with an adult than a child. That doesn't mean that you can't grow to rival them. Of course, of the 3 of us, I'm the closest to overtaking the Hokage after all. After a 3-hour break, she had enough chakra to get back to work. She successfully changed contact points from her feet to other parts of her legs twice, and to her back once. She was already tired again. That should be enough build up. I should be able to get to my hands now. She danced her way up the tree, twirled twice, spun the opposite direction once, and went into a cartwheel. Her hands stuck to the bark, her chakra managed to reach them in time. But her excitement was very short-lived. She wasn't able to send her chakra back to her feet quick enough, and after a painful rebound off the trunk, and graceful landing on the ground, she fell onto her back looking up at the sky between the leaves and breathing hard. Her hands fisted in the grass beneath her. It's no good if I can't get my chakra back to my feet in time. She glanced over at Sasuke scoring away at his tree. He had started advancing more than Naruto, but the blonde wasn't so far behind that he couldn't catch up. They were relentless, barely taking any break. Sasuke-kun uses too much chakra and Naruto not enough. If they just met in the middle, they'd have perfect control. The middle. She shot up, her eyes widening. Oh my god. That's it. I'm so stupid, how did I miss this? Chakra was made and circulated through the center of the body. It didn't require all of her chakra to lock on to the tree's surface. She'd kept trying to pass her chakra from her feet to her hands and back, but that was completely unnecessary. She just had to send the amount of chakra she needed directly to her hands from her center. It meant having to split her focus of where she sent chakra, but she could manage that. It couldn't be too much different than maintaining her posture while high kicking to the front. Sakura took a deep breath, focusing her chakra, and for the 8th time that day, danced her way up the tree. Sasuke stopped to watch with his full attention. He watched how fluidly her body moved, with such a controlled ease of motion, that the incredibly complex sequence of movements looked as natural and instinctual as blinking. He noted the small tears forming on her thighs and calves as she swung the back leg of her split across the bark and pivoted on her knee, the rough wood raking across her skin. She seemed to take no notice. She spun so fast, her other leg changing position several times over before she dropped into a successful cartwheel, flowing from it into a roundoff, and then a double handspring down the tree before pushing off and gracefully alighting on the ground. Her long pink hair floating down around her, catching the light and revealing the strands of red and blonde. She dropped to her knees, breathing hard, but she was smiling a real smile and her mint green eyes sparkled with happiness, pride, and relief. It was so different from the expressions she usually wore, that he couldn't pull his eyes away. Well, Sakura, you've completed this training, Kakashi said, hobbling over to her with a masked smile. And the sun's not even setting yet. Quote. Sakura let out a small musical laugh. You were right, sensei. Take a break. You can head back to Tazuna Sands when you're ready. You should head back soon, too, sensei. You need to rest. Kakashi waved her off. She crawled over to her tree and leaned her back against it in exhaustion. They're still going. Seriously, just how much chakra do they have? Naruto fell for the 100th time and looked up at his barely advancing score marks. Why wasn't he getting it? He glanced over to see that Sasuke was beating him. He could still catch up, but not if he didn't start making greater progress. Time for Plan B. Hey, Sakura-chan, he said, walking over to his exhausted teammate and squatting down. Can you help me get the hang of this? Sakura blinked in surprise. Naruto never asked her for help with his training. She was too weak to be much help to either of her teammates on that front. You want my help? Quote. Well, yeah, you're the best, Sakura-chan, believe it. What happened to not liking long explanations? She said, crossing her arms over her chest and glaring lightly. Hey. Naruto scratched the back of his head with a sheepish laugh. I promise I'll listen close this time, Sakura-chan. Alright, pay attention. It takes mental energy to generate and manipulate chakra, so if you get all stressed or distracted, you'll lose control and won't be able to do it. Take it easy. Relax and focus on the tree until you can feel how much or how little energy you'll need to center in the soles of your feet. But how can I tell how much energy I'll need? Well, you already have, haven't you? You've been able to get at least 4.5 meters up. So just remember that and focus on maintaining it. If you can't get it that way, use the momentum of your running start and slowly increase your chakra output until you stick, and then maintain that. Honestly, it'll be tougher to do it that way since you'll only have maybe 3 steps to figure it out. But I always end up losing control. How do you maintain the balance while doing all those hard moves? Quote, it's because you lose focus. Every time you pass your last mark, you get too excited, that distracts you and you lose your grip on your chakra. Don't start celebrating too early. Alright, I can totally do that. Believe it. Naruto cheered, bouncing back to his tree to try and apply her advice. It sort of worked. He got further past the highest mark than he had before, but then got excited that it was working, lost his focus and fell. And when Sasuke got higher than him, his sense of rivalry took over and all sense of relaxation completely left his body. Sakura sighed. This would take a while. Since she'd cleared her training, and there was still time left in the day, Sakura went to the bridge to keep an eye on Tazuna. She was exhausted from training, but it made her uncomfortable that they left the bridge builder alone for so long. They were supposed to be his bodyguards after all, and just because Zabuza was temporarily neutralized, didn't mean Gato wouldn't send someone else. She sat along the railing of the construction site and yawned. She had very little chakra left after training, but at least if something happened she could get Tazuna away and alert the others. All alone, Tazuna asked as he passed by, lugging a piece of lumber over his shoulder. Where are the blonde and the pretty boy? Sasuke-kun would probably hate that descriptor. Old man's got taste. Training. Quote, then why aren't you with them? I was. Kakashi-sensei told me to come here and protect you. Really? Tazuna wasn't entirely sure how he felt about that. Of the 3 kids, she seemed to be the most mature and trustworthy as a person, but the other 2 were clearly stronger. And strength was what you wanted from someone protecting you. Why had Kakashi sent her away? Had the training been too much for her? Tazuna, can I talk to you? The old man set down the beam he was holding and turned to the source of the interruption. What's wrong, Ichi? I've been thinking it over. I want off this bridge project. The man announced. What? Out of nowhere? You of all people. Tazuna felt betrayed. Tazuna, we go back a long way. I want to help you but I can't take this risk. Gato will kill us if we don't stop. And if you die, it won't just be this one project, we'll lose everything. Gichi looked down, ashamed but desperate. Please, just give up, the bridge isn't worth it. Quote, Sakura watched the exchange tensely. I can see where he's coming from, but this bridge has to be built. Or this entire city will continue to live in poverty. Tazuna had the same opinion. I can't do that. This bridge belongs to all of us. It's everything we've been working toward, for our entire city. When it's finished, it'll bring commerce and affluence to us. It'll put the land of waves on the map. But we're talking about lives here. Your life. The man yelled. It's afternoon already, isn't it? Let's call it a day. Tazuna said, turning his back to him. Gichi, you don't have to come back tomorrow. Quote, Sakura followed Tazuna as he walked away. My daughter asked me to pick up some things for our dinner on the way home. Tazuna explained as they walked through the city. Sakura took in the groups of homeless people sitting along the edges of buildings, the skinny, pinched look of malnutrition. Almost everyone seemed to have the dejected slump of their shoulders and hopeless look in their eyes. She felt all of it like a stab wound. This was one of her fears and anxieties, she and her mother ending up homeless and living on the streets. There was no way her mother would be able to survive that with her illness. She heard a cry of, stop. Thief. It wasn't the first one she'd heard since they set foot on the main street. These people needed that bridge. They needed a chance. Here we are. They came to a stop outside of a shopfront. A boy in torn and ragged clothes sat out front, head buried in his arms, a small empty collection cup in front of him. He's just like me. No, he's got it even worse than I do. Shanaru. I'll kill Gato for this. They stepped into the grocery, but she was met with the sight of almost completely bare shelves. It's like looking at my kitchen, except my kitchen only has to feed 2 people. This place is supposed to feed a whole city. The only other person in the store noted the girl with long, well cared for pink hair, and the bag resting on her hip. She must have some money. He tried to sneakily reach for her bag, but his hand brushed against her backside. Suddenly a small but calloused hand locked around his wrist and pulled his weight back, while she fluidly kicked his legs out from under him. Pervert! Sakura yelled, her body and mind having gone on autopilot the second she felt something touch her butt. No, the man on the ground protested weakly. It's not like telling her he was trying to pickpocket her was much of a defense. Weirdly, her face softened a little. Oh, she said, putting the man's feeble protest together with the state of the people around and the bag at her hip. Trust me, I don't have anything useful to you. The man got to his feet and ran out of the shop. Tazuna came up to her, having been making his purchases at the time, though he witnessed the whole interaction. He watched the man run out and sighed. It's been like this ever since Gato moved in. We've become a city of slackers, cowards and fools. That's why the bridge we are building is so important. It will be an emblem or courage. Maybe the people who've taken the path of least resistance will be willing to walk the road of courage and dignity again. The old man walked out of the store, Sakura in tow. Tazuna-san, if that man leaves the project, she began as they continued through the impoverished city. He wouldn't be the first. That's part of why it's taking so long. I keep losing crew members. They're too scared of Gato. All help. The words were out of her mouth before she processed what she was offering. You know how to build a bridge? No, but I'm not bad with tools. And I learn quickly. Why would you want to? That's not your mission. You're a target until that bridge is finished. The longer it takes, the longer you're in danger. Why wouldn't I, as your bodyguard, want you out of danger faster? It was a bit of a stretch, but it still made sense, she reasoned. Besides, I have to stay close to you anyways. Why sit around when I could be helping speed things up? Quote, I guess I could use all the help I can get. Just don't get in the way. Screw something up and you're benched. This is a bridge we're talking about after all. Shanaru, let's finish this shit and bring that Saika's corrupt business down. Quote, Sakura's thoughts were cut off by a tug at her backside. Again, turning around, she faced the large eyes and smiling face of a small 7-year-old girl, who held out her hands asking for food. Her clothes were baggy and dirty, and she was too skinny. It was like looking at herself if her life had gone just a bit worse than it was. Sakura, who barely ate enough herself, had nothing to give the girl, but she couldn't turn her away either. She crouched so she was eye level with the child. What's your name? Agaya. You're pretty, Oni-chan. Smart kid, ego and vanity stroking are good tactics for getting people to give you things. Agaya-chan, do you have a stove at home? Yeah, we use it mostly for heat since there's nothing much to cook. Agaya answered, confused by the weird question. The pretty girl with the sparkly green eyes and shiny pink hair turned to the old man next to her. Tazuna-san, do you mind if we make a quick detour? Not at all, the man replied curiously. Sakura turned back to the little girl in front of her. Can I show you something? Agaya nodded, with a confused smile, and followed the older girl, grabbing onto the corner of her dress to not get separated. Sakura held up an acorn and a pinecone. She'd lead them to the forest. If you soak acorns until the water's clear, you can roast, boil or mash them. They're a good source of protein. If you boil pinecones, they get soft enough to eat. They have a lot of healthy sugars, so they'll give you short bursts. T's of energy. She pointed to a nearby plant. See this plant here? That's rhubarb. You can tell by the wide, ruffled leaves, and the red color of the stem. The leaves are toxic, but the stem is really good for you. You'll need to soften it first though. The little girl stared at her wide-eyed. Really? Yes. Can you remember everything I just told you? Agaya nodded enthusiastically. Good. Repeat it back to me. Quote, Tazuna watched the interaction with needling curiosity, as the little girl recited what she'd been told, Sakura nodding gravely. She handed her the pinecone and acorn she was holding, and showed her how to dig up the rhubarb. The bridge builder had been confused by Sakura's reactions to things for a little while. When they first arrived at his home, unlike her teammates, Sakura hadn't seemed fazed by the shabby accommodations. If anything, she'd almost seemed impressed. Her offer to help him build the bridge as well, the others on her team wouldn't have offered. Well, the loudmouth blonde may have, but he'd probably cause trouble. Thank you. You're real smart, Oni-chan. Quote, so are you. Show your friends, okay. The little girl nodded and ran off. Her arms full of acorns, pinecones, and rhubarb. I'm sorry about that, Tazuna-san. We can go now. Alright, Sakura. Yes. Quote, why do you really want to help with the bridge? Sakura looked towards the run-down city, thinking about the widespread poverty. Cause you need help. It was a loaded statement. She could have been talking about Tazuna or the city. It could have been a practical statement or a deeply empathetic one. He could interpret it how he liked. Tazuna studied her for a second longer before grunting. Her statement didn't reveal much, but it was honest. Let's head back. Right. Boy, this is real fun. I can't remember the last time we shared a meal with so many people. Tazuna cheered jovially. I'm not sure fun is the word I'd use. There was palpable tension between Naruto and Sasuke. The two kept glaring at each other and weirdly, occasionally, Sasuke would glance over at her. Earlier, after Sakura had departed the clearing, the two had kept training. But Sasuke's progress had been slow and he noticed Naruto was beginning to catch up. He'd noticed Naruto talking to Sakura earlier, and it kept needling at him. What had they talked about? It continued to bug him. And Naruto had seemed to get a bit better after talking to her. Had she given him advice? Or encouragement? Or was it unrelated to training? His curiosity kept distracting him so much that he eventually gave into his pride and asked the blonde what she said. But then the idiot had to annoy him further by refusing to tell him. Since that moment, everything became about who reached the top first. Even eating. Sakura watched as the two inhaled their food, not even finishing what was in their mouths before both simultaneously held out their just emptied bowls. More please. They simultaneously requested. But the speed with which they ate didn't do their digestive tract any favors and both promptly turned away and vomited. That made Sakura's anger spike so quickly. Her words sounded more like they came from her internal voice than her normal one. What the hell is wrong with you two? Stop eating if you're just gonna hurl it back up, damn it. She yelled, slamming her hands on the table. I wanna eat. Sasuke muttered, wiping his mouth. Because, even if we make ourselves sick to do it, we have to eat if we want to get stronger. Naruto declared. How stupid are you? You don't get any benefit from food you don't keep down. She snapped. She took a deep breath and managed to regain some control over herself. Besides, doing that is wasteful. These people don't have a lot. You're being a burden. That managed to rein in both boys. Thank you, Sakura-chan, Tsunami said, but it's alright. This is the least we can do for how hard you all are working to keep my father safe. Quote, she shouldn't let them off so easily. Yeah, but I get it. I know what it's like to owe someone too. Images of her mother and Ino flashed across her mind. About that, what is this training you're doing exactly? Sakura said you released her from it to keep an eye on me. Tazuna asked. We're trying to climb trees using only our chakra. Naruto said excitedly. And I released Sakura from it because she completed the exercise and then some with flying colors. Kakashi finished, having read between the lines of Tazuna's statement. Oh, did she? The old man asked, a little surprised. It hadn't been the way she presented it earlier. Sakura-chan, she's the best. She can do way more than just run up trees. She can spin and flip and stuff too. Everyone's attention, except Inari's, landed on the girl. That's right, we're the best. Sakura found herself simultaneously thrilled and wildly uncomfortable being the center of attention. Any time she had been in the past, it was because she was being bullied. The positive attention felt good, but she didn't know what she was supposed to do or how to respond to it. So she turned her attention to the one person not looking at her, Tazuna's grandson. He had a troubled, far-away look on his face and was staring intently at a ripped picture on the wall. She felt the weight of almost everyone's eyes on her, and quickly stood up. "I'll help clean up Tsunami-san," she said, desperate for something to do, and immediately began clearing her place. To her surprise, Sasuke got up to clear his as well. "I never imagined Sasuke-kun doing housework, it makes sense though. He's all alone, no one else would do it for him." She placed her dishes in the sink and headed back to the table to finish clearing the rest of them, but paused at the ripped picture on the wall studying it closely. "Tsunami-san, why is this picture torn?" Inari-chan was looking at this the whole time we were having dinner. "Someone's face is completely gone. Is that deliberate?" She immediately saw the family tense and regretted asking. "Why'd I do that? There's plenty of personal stuff I don't share, I shouldn't have asked." "It was a picture of Inari's father," Tsunami answered quietly. "Once upon a time, our city called him a hero." Tazuna elaborated. Inari pushed away from the table and walked out of the room, slamming the sliding door behind him. "Inari." Tsunami whirled on her father. "I've told you repeatedly not to mention that in front of my son," she yelled, running out of the room after him. "Inari-chan seems to react strongly to that word, hero," Sakura observed quietly. "It sounds like there's a story." For the next 5 days, Naruto practically lived in the forest. He'd stay out all night training. Sasuke would join him during the day, but at least he knew that he needed to rest to build more chakra. That morning, when Sakura awoke and went to join the others for breakfast, she immediately noted Naruto's absence. "Naughty Naruto stayed out all night again, didn't he?" Tazuna asked. "Ever since you told us that story, he's been in the trees training all alone, night after night," she answered. "An idiot with an obsession." Quote, "It's good he's training, the stronger he is, the better off our team is, but this might be too much. If he exhausts his chakra, he could kill himself, he could be lying dead in the woods right now. He never did know when to quit. I hope he's alright. It's not good for a boy to spend night after night alone outside." Tsunami fretted. "There's nothing to worry about." Kakashi placated. "Naruto's a goofy kid, but he's also a full-fledged ninja." Quote, "Is it possible, could that bonehead have killed himself?" Sasuke normally wouldn't have entertained the notion, but if Sakura was actually concerned enough to voice it, it seemed worth considering. Kakashi was a bit surprised by that. He would have expected Sasuke to side with him or dismiss the chance altogether. Though, he'd been noticing for a little while now that the boy seemed to be extra observant of his pink-haired teammate and hold her opinions in higher regard than most others. Shortly after that, Sasuke had dismissed himself to continue training. Tazuna and Sakura finished breakfast, Sakura helping Tsunami with the dishes before she and Tazuna left for the bridge. Sakura had been helping Tazuna with construction. Honestly, the man was fairly shocked. The young girl hadn't been lying when she said she wasn't bad with tools. And since she was a ninja, she was pretty strong physically, able to lift lumber much greater than her size. Most of all, she was a surprisingly hard worker and rarely took a break. Since Gato came, Tazuna had lost at least 5 of his crew. They'd backed out, too scared to continue on the bridge project. The way Sakura worked made up for at least 2.5 of them. She couldn't operate any of the machinery, but that didn't matter. She was a much greater help than he expected. And with the slight but effective increase in manpower, the project was progressing rapidly. What Tazuna didn't know was that several of the odd jobs and side hustles Sakura used to do were of the construction nature. For people who couldn't afford to make formal job requests of the village, she'd helped fix fences, paint and build sheds, seal doors, and patch decks, among other things. She was never paid as much as if it had been a mission, but it did pay a little, and coupled with several of her team's D-rank missions, she'd gotten rather skilled at basic construction. She hadn't told Kakashi that she was helping. She wasn't sure how he'd feel about her going outside of mission parameters like that, but she didn't want to take the chance that he wouldn't allow her to continue. She knew he'd find out soon. He was almost recovered, and once he was, he'd surely be joining her at the bridge and see it for himself. But she figured that if he tried to stop her at that point, at least she would have gotten in some time to work on the bridge. It helped her to be doing something. When she sat still too long, she'd get anxious worrying about her mother, the people in the land of waves, Tazuna and his family, Kakashi Sensei, Zabuza. She was an anxious person and her mind was never very good at shutting off. Tasks and activities helped keep the anxiety at bay. The only time things were ever quiet in her head was when she'd dance. "Hey, little girl, why are you so good at building railings?" one of Tazuna's crew asked. "I've done it before, or something like at least. It's the same theory as building a fence, just with pipes instead of wood." Quote, "It's not like it's complex mathematics. We could totally do that too though. Shanaru, not bad. Never would have bet a girl like you'd be good at this stuff." "A girl like me? Yeah, you know. One with long pink hair. Not exactly the type you find around construction sites." "Oi, lay off her." Another worker chided. "She's giving us a hand here. Don't scare her off." It's fine," Sakura replied with a shake of her head, before turning to the first man with a light glare. "My hair color wasn't exactly my choice, you know." "Oh, would you change it if you could?" the one who came to her defense before suddenly teased. "Number." The men nearby broke into cantankerous laughter and Sakura smiled in spite of herself. It was frequently tense here, the men could use a bit of a laugh. "Sakura," Tazuna called. "Yes, Tazuna-san, if you ever change your mind about being a ninja, I'll hire you." The men laughed but agreed that they wouldn't mind Sakura joining their crew. "Thanks. But I don't plan on quitting." Sakura smiled. The next morning, Sakura and Kakashi went to check on Naruto and Sasuke's progress. Sakura sighed. Where did Naruto go this time? Pushing himself beyond his limit, going out by himself again last night. Kakashi sighed tiredly. And at breakfast this morning, Sasuke-kun says he's going for a walk and he disappears too. If she'd had trouble with this, would she be working this hard to get it? She'd like to think she would, but a part of her wasn't so sure. Even if she wanted to, she wouldn't be able to keep going for hours on end the way Naruto and Sasuke could. She simply didn't have the stamina her two teammates did. A kunai suddenly dropped at her feet. "Tadaaa." Naruto called happily, draped over a very high branch. His clothes were dirty, he looked exhausted, and his breathing was heavy, but he wore a face-splitting smile. Amazing, he was so hopelessly bad at this before, but he really managed to get all the way up there. Quote, well, do you see? Look at how high I can go. He called excitedly, standing up on the branch. But he was so tired his footing slipped and he lost balance. "You idiot." Sakura was panicking. "I don't have the physical strength to overcome his downward momentum if I try to intercept him." Quote, "No. If he falls from that height." Kakashi panicked as well. He wasn't healed enough to. "Psych." Naruto yelled, standing upside down on the branch, glued in place by his chakra. "Got ya suckers." The blonde cackled. You almost gave me a heart attack, you jerk." Sakura yelled. "Shanaro, I'm gonna kill you for this later." Suddenly, his feet disconnected from the tree, he'd lost control of his chakra. Sakura wasn't sure whether to panic this time or not that it changed much either way, she couldn't do anything to help him. Is it real this time? That little brat. That's what he gets for messing around in the first place. Ow. Naruto's frantic cry was cut off when his movement was suddenly arrested. Sasuke had taken Naruto's spot upside down on the branch and was holding the blonde by the ankle. "You bonehead," he admonished flatly. "Sasuke, Naruto was torn between being grateful and angry. Great timing, Sasuke-kun. Yes. Sasuke saves the day. He gives me the shivers. He's so cool. She felt her heart rate pick up when he'd appeared out of nowhere and saved their teammate. He really was the hero type. He'd done the same for her when he jumped in front of her and Tazuna when they were first attacked by those Chunin. Kakashi smiled up at the two. They were coming along nicely. Probably by the end of today they'd be ready. And just in time too. Before Tazuna and Sakura left for the bridge, Kakashi asked for their help with something. He was feeling better, and he needed to test how good his physical condition was now. He asked them both to sit on his back while he did one-fingered push-ups. Sakura alone would have been too light. That girl didn't eat enough, although Kakashi's minimal knowledge of her circumstances coupled with his intuition told him that that was by no choice of her own. He was certain though that she wasn't on any sort of stupid diet or something like that. He'd overheard from some academy-aged girls on the streets a little while back that that was something they were doing now. It was a bit of a strain, but he'd gotten to 198 reps when Tazuna spoke. I've been meaning to ask you, you know I duped you about how dangerous this mission was to come here. So why'd you stay? To know what is right and to choose to ignore it is the act of a coward, like master, like man. He hit 199. Those are the teachings of some of our previous Lords Hokage. His final representative got him to 200. This is the shinobi way of life. True shinobi do not merely dance to the tune of whoever pays the piper. Plus he doubted he would have been able to get his students to abandon the mission. He certainly wouldn't have been able to convince Naruto. That boy was dead set on keeping his oath. Sasuke wouldn't have wanted to back down either. At one point he thought Sakura would have. Hell, she'd advised them to go back when Naruto was first injured. But after hearing Tazuna's story, she, the last person he would have expected, became wildly determined to see this through too. The other two got off his back and he stood, flexing his hand. He was almost completely healed. By the end of today, he should be at full strength. Sakura watched her teacher with keen eyes. She knew what this had been. He was testing himself. And if she had to guess, he was almost completely better. She'd felt a bit of his strain when she'd been adding her weight to his back, but it wasn't that bad. And he'd made it all the way to 200. He should be fully better by tomorrow, but that means our enemy probably is too. That day at the bridge, Sakura worked 3 times harder than she had any of the previous days. She was determined to get as much of the bridge built as possible before Zabuza inevitably showed up again. Seeing her work so hard made the construction crew work even harder. After all, they couldn't let themselves be shown up by a pink-haired little girl. They stayed later too, working through sunset and only calling it a day at twilight when there was too little light to continue working. Sakura escorted Tazuna home, both tired from the long day. You two are back later than usual. Kakashi commented. Sakura noted that his eye lingered on her for some reason, and that the crutch he'd been using to help him walk was nowhere around. I'll say. Go wash up. Dinner's almost ready. Tsunami agreed. Thank you, Tsunami-san. Sakura said politely before excusing herself to the restroom. Maybe that was why her sensei had studied her for so long. Her clothes were covered in dirt and sawdust, and she definitely had a wood chip in her hair. Her hands were even stained with metal dust. Not at all how she was expected to look after an uneventful day doing nothing but keeping an eye on their charge. She washed and changed quickly, giving her dirty clothes a quick soak in soapy water before setting them on the outside porch to dry. She only had one change of clothes in her pajamas, which she wore currently. She hurried to the table just as Tsunami laid out the food. Sakura was excited. She was quite hungry from all the laboring today. Sakura had been eating better here than she had in her own home. Tsunami always gave her a full portion, unlike at home where she frequently gave her mother the larger portion, and despite never asking for seconds, Tsunami would automatically refill her bowl when it was empty. For her part, Tsunami had noted how skinny Sakura was. How her clothing, despite being clean, was far more worn than the others. How she was always so aware of how little the land of waves had and consciously tried not to burden their family. She was a mother after all, and mothers were observant when it came to children. These observations had led her to one conclusion. Sakura understood them in a way the others didn't. She likely had some level of experience with poverty. It made her want to look out for the girl more, at the very least feed her as much as she could. About a quarter of the way through dinner, the door creaked open to reveal a slightly dirty Sasuke supporting a very dirty and worn-out Naruto. "So you're finally back. Looking like someone the cat dragged in." Tazuna greeted. "Hey, both of us," Naruto huffed, but was too tired to finish the sentence. "We made it to the top of the tree," Sasuke finished, scowling at the blonde. He'd told him he'd wear himself out if he didn't take a break, the idiot. "Good. Naruto, Sasuke, starting tomorrow, you two can help Sakura protect Tazuna-san." "Yes, sir," they both answered, albeit Naruto with way more enthusiasm. "Phew. Well, I'm all sweaty, dirty, and real worn out from all the work on the bridge today, but construction is almost complete," Tazuna announced, with a beaming smile. Sakura smiled as well. Construction was almost complete, which meant that even if Zabuza attacked, even if God forbid he succeeded, there wouldn't be too much left to do. The crew could probably finish it off even without Tazuna's supervision. "Father, you and Naruto are two of a kind. Please don't work yourselves to death," Tsunami chided, as Naruto sank collapsed on the table with a worn-out sigh. "Yep. Don't worry. I'd be much worse if it wasn't for Sakura," the bridge builder soothed. All of her teammates' eyes suddenly shot to her. "Why? Was there an attack?" Sasuke questioned, checking his female teammate for any sign of injury. Her cheeks tinted pink under his gaze. "No, nothing like that. She's been helping with the construction. Sped up the process a great deal. You should have seen her today. She could give any of my crew a run for their money. We wouldn't be nearly as far along if it wasn't for her." Tazuna hadn't mentioned anything before in case Kakashi ordered the girl not to help anymore, but seeing as the full team would be guarding him tomorrow, he wanted to give the girl the well-deserved credit she'd been lacking the past week. "Oh?" Kakashi asked, turning to his female student. He studied her, her eyes wide and face flushing with embarrassment. He recalled what he'd heard earlier while he was in the woods after checking in on Naruto's and Sasuke's progress. His students were progressing quite nicely. Both were managing to maintain their chakra for much longer periods and had managed to climb almost all the way up. They didn't seem to want any instruction or interference, and that wasn't really his teaching style anyway, so after checking to make sure EY hadn't killed themselves, he departed. He decided to fit in some light training himself, just to make sure he really was in peak condition for their next confrontation, and went for a run through the woods. He hopped from tree to tree efficiently and without much strain, but stopped and hid his presence when he heard voices coming his way. "Agaya, you sure we can eat these?" a boy of about 10 asked, a little rudely. That's what Oni-chan said. But she said you have to soak them until the water is clear first. Then you can roast them. I tried it at home and they were really good." A group of children were wandering along the forest floor gathering acorns, pine cones, and some plant he couldn't identify. From this far away, the youngest of the kids appeared to be 5, the oldest no more than 13. Leading them was an 8-year-old girl, the one the little boy had called Agaya. "Why did she only tell us now?" Quote, "'Cause she's not from here," the girl responded with an eye roll. The boy looked around, eyes narrowing, and whispered, "Gato might have sent her to poison us." "How can you trust her? She was with Tazuna-san. And she was really nice and had pretty pink hair. If Tazuna-san trusts Nei-chan, so do I." Kakashi listened more intently at that. Pink hair and with Tazuna-san. They had to be talking about Sakura. "Remember, you have to boil the pine cones and mash them. Otherwise they're too hard and spiky to eat." That's what Nei-chan said. Kakashi turned away and left the kids to their gathering. It seemed his pink-haired student was trying to provide alternative ways to feed the city's children. His female student seemed rather intent on helping these people, first showing the kids how to find food, then helping with the actual construction of the bridge. You didn't have to do that, Sakura. Kakashi stated, trying to gauge her reaction. Sakura shrugged. It may not have been their mission, and thus she didn't have to do it strictly speaking, but how could she just sit there and do nothing? It wasn't like she had anything better to do. Why not help? I overheard some of the city kids in the woods today, Kakashi continued casually. A group of them were gathering acorns and pine cones. One of them kept giving instructions about how to eat them that came from her, Nei-chan, with pretty pink hair. Oh good. She did tell others. Sakura felt a little relieved. The more kids Agaya told, the more people could eat, assuming those kids had families. She's still calling me pretty. Flattery won't help her if the person she's flattering isn't around to hear it. Maybe she just genuinely thinks we're pretty. She felt the eye roll from her internal self in the back of her mind. That part of her was vain and did care how she looked. After all, Sakura did care, she'd just stopped having time to actually devote anything to that care when she turned 10. Sasuke listened curiously. She'd helped some of the kids here find food. Why? Is the situation that bad? Sasuke asked, his eyes boring into her jade green ones. The rest of Team 7 hadn't seen anything of the city aside from the small port when they first arrived. Other than that, they'd only been in the woods, training, and at Tazuna's house, resting. He watched her eyes become a bit sad and tired looking. The smile she'd been wearing faltered a little as she nodded. Once again, Sasuke noted, Sakura seemed distinctly older than 12. Yeah, it's bad. There's a lot of homelessness. Almost everyone I see shows signs of malnutrition. Many people are out on the streets begging for work, money, or food. Pickpocketing and desperation theft seems commonplace. Tazuna and Tsunami looked down sadly. Inari stared fixedly at the torn picture on the wall. Naruto and Sasuke stared at her, a little shaken by her report. Why didn't you say anything? Sasuke snapped. Neither of you asked. Would it have changed anything? You two needed to train. We're on this mission in the first place to try and remedy that. What difference does knowing the details make? Sakura countered. She wasn't wrong. That girl you saw, Tazuna cut in, she came up to Sakura and asked her for food. I didn't have anything to give her, but I couldn't just send her away, so I took her to the forest and showed her some things there that were edible. Sakura paused, and then her head shot to her sensei. Don't worry, I didn't forget the mission. I didn't let Tazuna-san out of my sight, I swear. Not then and not when I've been helping with construction. Quote, relax Sakura. It's fine. He actually had been a little concerned about that but figured Tazuna would never let him hear the end of it if they left him completely unattended. I'm just surprised. You turned out to be quite the philanthropist. Quote, hardly. Sakura retorted with a dry laugh. You need money to be a philanthropist. Besides, the sooner the bridge is finished, the sooner Tazuna-san's not a target, the sooner the mission ends. This is just to get us home faster. Not a full lie, but not exactly the truth either. She was doing that a lot lately. The more they delved into her motives, the more they'd figure out her situation. It wasn't that she wanted to lie to her team, or keep them in the dark. It was just personal. Her mother's illness and her finances were her problems to deal with, they shouldn't have to be involved. Most of all, she feared them looking down on her the way everyone else did. She feared both their disgust and their pity. She'd rather wait until she could at least start getting her mother treatment before disclosing anything. Once she had some good news, and things were looking better for her, then she'd tell them. Naruto didn't know what philanthropist meant. Nor did he believe Sakura's statement that this was just to get them home faster. He saw the way she looked away and crossed her arms when she said it. Obviously she was just embarrassed by the compliment. Naruto grinned widely, weakly lifting his head off the table. You're amazing Sakura-chan. You're so nice and kind, and that kid wasn't wrong about you having pretty hair. Naruto cheered, rising from his seat enthusiastically, completely oblivious to Sasuke's glare. Shut up, Naruto. You're embarrassing me, Sakura mumbled, looking away, lightly flushed. Why couldn't it be Sasuke-kun saying that? It'd be out of character if he did. A girl can dream, can't she? Killjoy. No, seriously, Sakura-chan. I mean, Naruto was cut off when his legs gave out and he collapsed back into his seat, his head leaning tiredly into the table. Naru, why do you wear yourself out trying? Exclamation mark. Look at you can't even stand up. Inari suddenly yelled, tears streaming from his face as he glared at the exhausted blonde. No matter how hard you train, you'll never be a match for Gato's thugs. You act all cool, and talk all tough, but big strong guys like that are always too much for people weaker than they are. They'll destroy you. Everyone in the room stared at the boy in shocked silence. The explosion seemed to come from nowhere. Shut up. I'm not you, and I'm not gonna lose. Naruto answered stubbornly, not even bothering to pick his head up from his arms. Just watching you ticks me off. You go running your mouth when you don't know a thing. This isn't your town, and you don't know a thing about me. You're always clowning around and having fun. You don't know a thing about suffering or loneliness or what my life is like. Quote, that's not fair. So, you figure it's noble to star in a melodrama and treat everyone around you like guests at your pity party. Naruto growled. Rage gave him enough energy to look up. It takes a really big man to sit around and cry, Naruto spat sarcastically. You brat. You big baby. The blonde pushed away from the table and stormed off. Naruto, you went too far, she admonished. Not that it stopped him. And not that Inari didn't sort of deserve it. But still, Naruto was older, he should have at least been more tactful about it. She turned to Inari and tried to keep her tone calm. Inari-chan, you don't know what our lives have been like either, so please don't assume. People have all kinds of different ways of handling things. Kakashi gave her a gentle nod. The room was too tense and suffocating. She quickly helped clear the table, and excused herself to bed. Sasuke followed. Were you including yourself in that, or was it about us? Quote, the hushed darkness around them, and the fact that they were both lying down, gave the moment an intimate feel that had Sakura's heart pounding. What you said to Inari earlier. Oh, I don't know, it was general, I guess. Quote, that's not an answer. She held in a sigh. He was always so persistent when hunting answers, like why she was always late. Out of her whole team, he seemed to be the most aware that she had a situation, and the one most interested in learning what that situation was. Does that mean he's interested in me? I wonder what he'll think of me when he finds out. It was about all of us. Our whole team. I mean, we don't know Kakashi-sensei's situation, other than his closest friends having passed away. I don't know the details of what happened to you. I already made an assumption and said something careless and hurtful to you once. Inari-chan was doing the same, so I thought I'd warn him against that. Then what's your situation? He'd never tried asking her point blank. It had been bothering him for a while. Maturity like hers at such a young age usually came from some kind of hardship. So what? What was it that had made her so adult? What makes you think I have a situation? She forced a light and playful tone into her voice. It was too soon for this. She needed to dig herself out at least a little bit, first, before she enlightened her team. TCH, annoying. Sasuke muttered. She was faking, he could tell. She was avoiding the topic again. Which meant she was definitely hiding something. It couldn't just be the bullying she'd endured from the other girls in the academy. For the life of him, he couldn't remember how they'd pick on her or what they'd say. She hadn't really been on his radar at the time. She was one of the few not constantly trying to insert herself into his personal space, although he was sure he'd caught her eyes on him a couple of times. Don't worry, I'm fine, she told him. She kept saying things like that to reassure him, as if he was concerned. He wasn't. He wasn't worried about her. He was just curious. That was all. He tried to ignore the needling instinct that told him that anyone who claimed they were fine, 95% of the time, were not. Annoying. What did we do this time? Well, he has kind of asked me about myself a few times and I keep dodging, so I guess that would be annoying. Why does he want to know? Why wouldn't he? We're teammates. Maybe he loves us. Why is that always the conclusion you jump to? Sasuke sighed. There was no point in continuing this conversation. She wasn't in a forthcoming mood and she'd just keep dodging anyways. She really was different. Most girls practically threw themselves at his feet, wanting to bombard him with all the inane details of their lives and claiming they wanted to know everything about his, not that they'd be able to handle it if he told them. They'd run the other direction. But this girl did everything she could to keep her life painted in the broadest strokes possible. She worked so hard to evade any questions that might give her away. But her actions betrayed her. Working so hard on the construction of the bridge, giving the children another way to feed themselves, it was like she deeply cared for these people and wanted to do everything she could to help them. Why? Sure, it was the good and right thing to do. But her actions seemed to hold more weight than just that. It was like there was something personal for her about it. And the ways she would yell at Naruto, there was something almost motherly in her word choice. She was so nurturing and gentle when treating injuries, like caregiving was second nature to her. Did Sakura have a younger sibling or something? Sasuke had let the conversation die and Sakura tried not to let that bother her. She didn't want him to keep asking about her life, she wasn't ready to tell him yet. But she really liked talking to Sasuke. There was something oddly soothing about his blunt manner. His voice relaxed her and his presence made her feel safe and secure. She couldn't even begin to know why that was the case, but she wasn't about to question it. She so rarely had a sense of security and stability in her life, so she would cling to it wherever she could find it. Hey Sasuke-kun. Congrats on finishing your training, we can be together now, our team, I mean. Doubtful. That idiot's probably going to be too tired to join us tomorrow. He's probably passed out already. Quote. That was worrying. Sasuke was right. He'd been exhausted, and he probably hadn't stayed conscious for long, but he hadn't come back to the room. If he was passed out. Sakura stood up, fully ready to track him down, but no sooner had she done so than the door opened. Kakashi came in carrying a sleeping Naruto. He glanced at his students, one standing with a look of concern painted across her face, the other staring back at him with an unsurprised expression. Is he okay? Where was he? Sakura hissed in a demanding whisper. He's fine. He fell asleep on the roof. I assume he went up there to calm down. Kakashi answered calmly. Sasuke watched as Sakura tucked Naruto in, making sure he was fully covered by the blanket. She was doing it again, that almost motherly thing that was so strange to see from a 12-year-old girl. She had to have a younger sibling, that had to be it, after all, his brother used to. He turned away from the scene sharply. Whatever his brother used to do meant nothing anymore. Sakura settled back into her sleeping mat, satisfied that Naruto was safe. If Sasuke's presence made her feel safe and secure, both her teammates' presences made her feel reassured. It made her feel like she had a full family again, instead of the one she did have, which was only half full and hanging on by a thread. She drifted off to her light, patchy sleep, with a warm feeling in her chest. Well, please take care of Naruto. He's worn himself out. I doubt he'll be able to more for the rest of the day. Kakashi warned Tsunami, as the group got ready to go. We're off, Tsunami. Tazuna called. Bye. She waved them off as the group set out. The warmth Sakura felt about being with her full team again had worn off, replaced by a sense of foreboding. The walk was calm and serene, which felt off to Sakura. Their enemies had recovered by now. They should be on the move. They should be stopping them. Wouldn't it make most sense to try cutting them off before they reach the bridge? She passed a hand through her hair to calm herself. Sasuke caught how tense Sakura looked, and recognized her nervous tick. What? Why aren't we being attacked? Shouldn't you be happy or not? Tazuna shot her a quick glance. If they're worried about you finishing the bridge, shouldn't they try to be cutting us off before we reach it? Unless. Sakura's eyes widened. Unless they knew even if he reached it he wouldn't be able to complete it, but how would they know that? Even if they sabotage the bridge, he and his crew could repair the crew. Quote. Sakura started running. The group was startled by the girl's reaction, but had learned to trust her analysis, and picked up speed as well. They weren't far from the bridge anyways. Sakura, what is it? Kakashi prompted sternly. They would try to stop us on the way unless they knew there was no way he'd finish even if he got there. The only way that would be the case was if he did something too. They reached the bridge and stopped abruptly at the scene before them. The bodies of the construction crew were all on the ground, blood smears around them. My crew, Tazuna yelled, eyes widening in horror. What the hell? What happened? Tazuna demanded, kneeling next to one of the men. What could have? He supported the man's torso a little, propping him up and pressing a hand to his wound. Monsters, the man choked out. I'll kill him. I swear I'll kill him. How dare he hurt these people? Quote. Sakura felt nauseated when she ran over to Tazuna and pulled him back towards Kakashi and Sasuke. She wanted to check on the injured men, help them if it was at all in her power. She'd been working with them, by their side for a week now. She knew them and it hurt seeing them like that. It really hurt not even trying to help. But there wasn't time. If they were in that state, it meant their enemies were already here. And if the whole crew died, then Tazuna had to survive. He was the only one left who could finish the bridge. Sure enough, a mist began enveloping the area. Thankfully, she managed to drag Tazuna back to the group before it got too thick. He didn't fight her, since he knew what she was doing and why. They're coming, Kakashi warned. He and Sakura had been right. Zabuza was still alive, and he was back to finish what he started. Sensei. Zabuza. This is his hidden mist jutsu, isn't it? Sakura recognized. Her memory always had been near perfect. Been a while, Kakashi. His gravely voice rumbled from all around them, completely obscured by the mist. And I see you've got those brats tagging along, just like last time. And the little boy is trembling again, poor thing, the missing nin mocked. The mist cleared enough to reveal that they were completely surrounded by his water clones. Sakura yanked the bridge builder behind her. I'm shaking with eagerness for a rematch. Sasuke smirked confidently. She wished she had that kind of battle confidence. Zabuza seemed to find the thought amusing. Kakashi just smiled. Go ahead, Sasuke. Quote. He was incredibly fast. In a whirl of speed, he slashed through all the clones with kunai, returning to his original location as water splashed around him. She barely even saw the attack. And he was standing with so much poise and grace. He may not have been a dancer, but he moved damn well. With the clones cleared, they were able to see the real Zabuza about 4.5 meters away, the masked boy standing next to him. Well, my water clones were obviously no match for you. It seems the brats have matured quite a bit into worthy rivals, Haku. Quote. Indeed. The masked boy answered. So his name was Haku. Looks like you were right, Sakura. Our mysterious masked friend is playing on Zabuza's team. You've got some nerve, tricking us like that and shamelessly appearing now. She growled at the masked boy. This one's mine, Sasuke said authoritatively, his glare trained on Haku. If he was as strong as Kakashi said, he'd be a good measure for his current power levels, and how much further he needed to go to beat Itachi. That was quite a show you put on before, but we're on to you now and I hate bad actors. Sasuke-kun's so cool. If this were Naruto, this is where you'd be yelling at him, Kakashi addressed the pink-haired girl in front of him. That's because Naruto's reckless and impulsive. He would have just charged in blindly by now. Sasuke-kun hasn't and won't. You sure there's not another reason? Kakashi teased. He'd noticed the way the girl blushed around her dark-haired teammate, and that she never seemed to yell at him nearly as much as she did Naruto. Even when she did admonish him, Her tone was almost gentle. And the way she was blushing now was a definite tell that he was right. Is now really the time for this, sensei? She snapped, huffing and looking away from her dark-haired teammate, who spared the briefest of glances at the question before turning his full attention back to Haku. Humor is an important tool on the battlefield, Sakura. Kakashi tossed back lightly before letting the subject drop, studying the missing nin in front of them. There was a whirl in front of them, as Haku suddenly appeared, swiping at Sasuke, who just barely managed to deflect. But Sasuke acclimated to the speed quickly, and when Haku struck again, Sasuke was able to block more easily. The fighting's too close, Sakura murmured, noting the proximity between Sasuke and Haku, and Tazuna. If he was clever enough to trick us the first time, he might use fighting with Sasuke-kun as an excuse to get close to Tazuna-san. Quote. Kakashi was apparently thinking something similar. Sakura, we have to cover Tazuna. Take that side and stay close. Let Sasuke handle Haku. Yes, sir. They managed to clear Tazuna of the immediate area, getting him a safer distance away. It was far enough that she couldn't clearly hear many of the words exchanged between Haku and Sasuke, but she could still see the battle, what little of it her eyes could keep up with anyways. They both were fast. Scary fast. They seemed to be at a standoff when Haku began weaving signs with one hand. One-handed? How's that even possible? Kakashi was equally shocked. He'd never seen anything like it. Maybe he'd miscalculated when letting Sasuke fight this kid. Haku cast his jutsu and the water around the two started to rise up, surrounding them, the droplets sharpening into points. Sasuke-kun. She screamed in horror as the water converged on her teammate. There was a dark streak as Sasuke shot into the air, his chakra focused into his feet to give him more strength and height. Shuriken rained down on Haku, who was having a hard time dodging them all. Sasuke was suddenly behind the masked boy, two kunai in each hand. Haku managed to block his first attack and dodge his second by dropping to the ground, but Sasuke wasted no time in pulling a kick back to aim at his head. A kick which he landed successfully, sending Haku flying back towards Zabuza. The missing nin looked shocked. No one had ever beaten Haku's speed. You're fast. I'm faster. Sasuke stated coolly. That's my mine. He's the best. Shanaru. Since when was he mine? Ga, this isn't the time for this. Killjoy. Her own voice berated her. Not for the first time. You had that coming for underestimating my team, and the name calling. Kakashi stated calmly, though there was a small hint of smugness in his tone. He may not look like much, but Sasuke here is the top-rated rookie from all of Konoha, I'm sure you can see why. And Sakura here is our sharpest mind. She figured out what was going on here even before I did. You're damn right we are. Shanaru. And last but not least, let's not forget our number one knucklehead ninja, the maverick showstopper, the one and only Naruto. Despite Kakashi's praise, he still managed to look rather bored. Zabuza's gravely laugh carried ominously. That's not a good sign. What's that eyebrow-less freak laughing about now? Haku, you do understand that if this goes on, you could end up dying at the very hands of the person you sought to spare. Yes, I do. What a pity. Haku seemed to emanating a cold front. The temperature of the area noticeably dropped. Haku began to weave signs. Secret ninja art. Ice crystal magic mirror jutsu. The water surrounding Sasuke rose up again, but this time instead of forming sharp points, it took the shape of various rectangles, which hardened over into a dome of reflective icy mirrors, encasing Sasuke. Kakashi's eye went wide. He didn't know this technique, which meant he had no idea if his student could handle it. Haku entered one of the mirrors from the outside. This can't be good. Inside the dome, an image of Haku appeared in every mirror, surrounding Sasuke. Damn. Kakashi jumped towards the mirror dome. Whatever this jutsu was, it was powerful. But before he could reach it, Zabuza intercepted him. Let's not forget, I'm your enemy. Our children can play together while my boy kills yours. Quote. Kakashi glared. This was definitely not good. He needed to get to Sasuke now. Focus, Sakura. There's got to be something you can do to help, figure it out. There has to be a trick to undoing a jutsu like this. Put your sharp mind to work and figure it out already. Mirrors. Why mirrors? What can mirrors do? Inside the dome, Haku tossed a single Senbon, cutting Sasuke's upper arm. Suddenly Senbon were flying everywhere, shredding across him. There were too many. It hurt. A lot. He screamed. Sasuke. Kakashi yelled, hearing the boy's scream of pain. Any sudden moves, and I'll kill those other two. Zabuza yelled, planting himself firmly in Kakashi's way. Mirrors, reflect. Haku went into one. The jutsu probably lets him reflect himself into the others, and his reflections do whatever he does, but how do you beat it? Sasuke let out another scream. She couldn't take it. She couldn't just stand here and do nothing, but that would mean leaving Tazuna open. Tazuna-san, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to leave you for just a little bit. Tazuna stared at the girl who'd worked so desperately to help him save his people. How could he stand in the way of her saving hers? Go ahead. I'll be fine. She jumped off immediately. I'm doing what I always accuse Naruto of, running in without a plan. But I can't just stand here thinking while Sasuke-kun, I need to do something. Running into the dome's a no, but maybe if I try to break a mirror from the outside. She tossed a kunai as hard as she could at one of the mirrors, but Haku popped halfway out of the mirror and caught it. He hadn't prepared for the shuriken that seemed to come from nowhere, almost slicing his neck off and forcing him to pull himself out of the mirror to dodge. Kakashi and Zabuza turned to look in surprise. Who? It couldn't be. Sasuke smirked from where he lay on the ground, bleeding from multiple cuts. It was about time that dead last show-off got here. Uzumaki Naruto, at your service. The blonde announced boisterously. Here I am to save the day. You know how the story goes. Things look bleak, till the hero arrives and then POW. Bye bye bad guys. He is truly an idiot with great timing. What we really needed was an ambush. Kakashi stared at his blonde student, eye-wide with exasperation. That little. He just had to run in and paint a target on himself. Sakura had been right again, he really did always run in recklessly. Zabuza smirked. This brat again. Leaning back, he chucked several shuriken at the loudmouth, intending to get him out of Haku's way, but strangely, they were all knocked aside by Senbon. What are you doing? He demanded of the masked boy. Zabuza, sir, please let me have this boy. I want to fight him in my own way. So you want me to keep my hands off him, Haku? How charmingly naive of you, as usual. Sasuke snorted. That guy naive. Yeah right. It's like Sasuke was being cut to ribbons by 1,000 needles, but the cuts were superficial. He was killing him by centimeters, saving the vital targets and deathblow for later, Sasuke thought. He couldn't figure out what technique he was using. His clones all hid in the mirrors and then struck simultaneously. He couldn't even see him move. Haku kept striking before he could spot his weapon's trajectory. It couldn't just be a clone jutsu. The ice mirrors were a part of it somehow. But he couldn't figure out their significance. Whatever was going on, the mirrors had to be the key. His only chance was to concentrate on the battle here and trust Naruto to set him free from the outside. He'd probably be a BLE with Sakura's insight. Yo, Sasuke Tem, I'm here to rescue you. Naruto was crouched in front of him, his hand up in some sort of idiotic salute, that knucklehead. Why you doofus? No stealth, no caution, and you call yourself a ninja? Exclamation mark. Now that you've just gotten yourself trapped in here with me, do what you want. I don't really care. Oh fine. I went through hell to rescue you and this is the thanks I get. Kakashi twitched. Leave it to the number one knucklehead ninja. Once he starts helping, things go from bad to worse. If he went to help Naruto and Sasuke, he'd leave Tazuna completely exposed, but he couldn't just abandon the boys. Sakura's mind had been rendered blank by Naruto's sheer stupidity. All thoughts ceased and she could only stare in disbelief when the blonde had actually entered the mirror dome. But seeing Haku enter one of the mirrors jarred her out of her stupor. Shit. They're both trapped in there now. I need to think of something fast or they might really. Panic was rising in her. Her teammates might really die. This was different than her mother, who was dying slowly, giving her lots of time to come up with cures and treatments and solutions. This wasn't about reading into someone's word choice to unravel their secrets. This was 6 seconds before her boys could die, and she wasn't thinking fast enough. The awareness of that was only adding to her panic and disrupting her thoughts more. Come on, think. The mirrors have to be important, and they're made of ice, so maybe. Sasuke-kun, try fire. She screamed desperately. It had been the only thing she could come up with. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Quote, it's not even making a dent. Naruto yelled. That pitiful flame will barely touch my ice mirrors. And then the rain of Senbon started again. Which one of you is real? Naruto questioned, his voice as frantic as Sakura's thoughts. Your eyes will never see the truth. I can't be caught. Shadow clone jutsu. Naruto shouted despite Sasuke's protests. His clone army jumped at all of the mirrors, but each one was dispelled quickly and the real Naruto was left to take a barrage of Senbon. The technique I'm using is part of the space-time ninjutsu. The art of teleportation. And the only tools I need to perform it are the mirrors that hold my image. I move so quickly, the pair of you might as well be standing still. Quote, Kakashi's eye widened in surprise. So that was it. I never imagined that anyone could master such a technique so young. Zabuza gave a gravely laugh. Such a technique? Sakura questioned. She'd certainly never heard of anything like this before. It's a Kekkei Genkei, a skill that can be passed from one generation to the next. A genetic trait, running through the bloodlines of those of purest shinobi pedigree. Some of the most extraordinary techniques are handed down from generation to generation solely on that basis. Like your Sharingan, Sakura murmured looking back at the mirror dome. Precisely, it's part of the same order of skills as my eye. But even my Sharingan can't copy, mimic, or break this boy's jutsu. That was very bad news, news that didn't help Sakura's ever-growing panic. She couldn't think, couldn't do anything. She was completely useless. It can't end like this. I've got a dream to fulfill. She heard Naruto growl. I find it difficult to embrace the full shinobi philosophy. I can't help but prefer that the pair of you not force me to kill you. However, if you two are going to come at me, I shall kill my own heart with my blade, just as the word shinobi was originally the words heart and blade, and act as a full-fledged shinobi would. This bridge is a nexus of our destinies, and all of our dreams and futures balance on the edge of a knife. I have my own dreams as you have yours. Please try not to resent me, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes, to protect the one I care about the most, to fight, kill, or die to fulfill that person's dreams. Doing so is my own dream. To that end, I will become a true shinobi, and kill you both. Hearing that proclamation spiked Sakura's panic into overdrive. He really was willing to kill her teammates. He was preparing to do so now. She had to do something, but she was frozen, her mind wouldn't work and her body wouldn't respond. I can't lose them, I already lost Dad. And I'm watching Mom slowly wither and nothing I'm doing is truly working and I pushed Ino away cause I didn't want to drag her down, but I can't lose them too. Why can't I do anything? Why can't I think of anything? Why am I so useless? Her fists balled at her sides. Don't lose, Sasuke-kun. Naruto. You can't lose. Don't lose. Quote. Don't encourage them, Sakura. Kakashi murmured. He could see the girl's panic and desperation. Hear it in her voice. It was obvious how much she loved her team. He was glad that the panic had frozen her rather than driven her into doing something reckless and stupid like trying to attack. She was no match for this boy. And whatever esteem he seemed to have placed in Naruto and Sasuke to have asked Zabuza to spare them, he wasn't sure that it extended to Sakura. She was weaker than both, and outwardly appeared less driven, though he knew that wasn't actually the case. But the boy didn't know that and probably held less respect for her, which would make him less hesitant to kill her. Knowing her, she'd probably beat herself up relentlessly for freezing, but for now it was better that way. He'd finally acknowledged that she held a lot of potential, but potential meant nothing until it expressed itself, and she hadn't trained enough for that to have happened yet. What? She was unable to look at her sensei. Unable to tear her eyes from the mirror dome she was sure would soon house the two corpses of her teammates. Even if we knew of a way to counter his technique, your teammates still wouldn't be up to the task of defeating that boy. Quote, you mean not up to killing him, right? She always had been quick on the uptake. Yes, those two haven't yet developed the psychological strength to turn their hearts to ice and take a human life. That boy has lived with the kind of emotional anguish that prepares him to be a true shinobi. No true shinobi could ever be born of a place like your village, a place of weakness, of peace. You don't live with death, or grow up needing to kill to ensure your survival. In you those skills, and the mindset they require, die stillborn. Zabuza growled, his voice grating. Uchiha and Uzumaki, huh? Those poor boys have had it rough. He's wrong. His entire clan was killed. They have been in anguish, all alone. At that time, I was crying, that man, he left me alone, with no one. I've never had anyone to rein me in. Even Kakashi-sensei. This is a memorial. It has the names of my friends engraved on it. They've all lived in pain, having to take care of themselves alone. Hell, Sasuke-kun's goal for the future is to kill someone, and I've grown up living with death. I'm forced to watch my mother die daily, and I've grown up having to steal and scrape to survive, and to buy time. The fact that any of us manage to keep waking up and trying is strength. There is no way people like us can't prepare ourselves mentally to do whatever we must, regardless of the peaceful village we come from. Shanaru. How dare he look down on us when he doesn't know what we've been through? Sakura turned and looked Zabuza dead in the eye with a murderous glare. You know nothing about what we've been through. Our peaceful village does not ensure survival, and this team has suffered more than enough emotional anguish you claim is so necessary for the shinobi mindset. Don't think for 1 second that we're incapable of killing if that's what's needed. Her tone was as lethal as her eyes. Zabuza was actually a little impressed. In that moment, the little girl looked like she could harden herself and commit murder. Clearly she at least did have some kind of emotional anguish she'd been living through. Not that he could fathom what that could have been. What did any of these kids suffer in a village like theirs? Kakashi was floored. The look in her eyes was hardened. He would have expected it from Sasuke maybe, but not from her. She freaked out over her team's minor cuts, had medicinal herbs memorized, and created a very effective healing ointment. She offered to help build this bridge and taught the city children about additional food sources. If anything, she seemed to deeply value life. Yet it seemed that if it came down to having to kill, she was the first on the team who might actually be able to deal that final blow, and to look at Zabuza with that murderous intent and speak in that deadly tone, knowing their vast difference in power, the level of bravery and recklessness that was far from what he ever would have expected from Sakura. She may have been brave, but he didn't think it was that much, and she was the exact opposite of reckless. Well said, Sakura. You'll forgive me if I put an end to this, Kakashi said, glaring at Zabuza as he moved to lift his forehead protector from his eye. Hey, going to use the Sharingan. What a vulgar maneuver. So obvious, so lacking in finesse. Zabuza charged, kunai in hand, and stabbed at Kakashi's still hidden Sharingan. The kunai met flesh, but it was that of his hand, which he'd used to block the incoming blade. His blood dripped to the ground. You can sneer all you want about my lack of finesse, Zabuza, it doesn't change the fact that you're afraid of the Sharingan. And of me, Kakashi said darkly. Zabuza chuckled. A ninja's secret weapon should be employed judiciously, not displayed at random to every foe you face. That may be true normally, but that doesn't apply to a skill like the Sharingan. He would have to use it often. The more jutsu he copies, the more powerful he becomes. You should feel privileged. No one has ever lived to see the Sharingan a second time. And no one will see it thrice. Hehe, by all means, defeat me if you can. You still won't have what it takes to kill Haku. Quote, he's not wrong. Kakashi-sensei said he couldn't beat his Kekkei Genkai, and that Haku was more powerful than him. As they are now, Naruto and Sasuke-kun don't stand a chance. Think Sakura, think damn it. Quote, since he was a toddler, I've beaten his skills into him. Even in the face of unthinkable adversity, he has always prevailed. He's lost his regard for his own life and become a killing machine, a true shinobi. Quote, that's horrible. Sakura couldn't help but feel for the boy, but also strangely, she could relate a little. Her mom had admonished her several times on how little time she spent on herself. Sasuke had too. In a way, he'd never exactly said it, but she saw the looks he gave her whenever she neglected her own injuries in favor of her team's, or how she always held back her thoughts in concern for her teammates' emotions. She didn't remember what it was to care about her own life. The only reason she'd been breathing so long was to care for her mother. When she'd been placed on Squad 7, her teammates also joined that reason. But if dying meant she could cure her mom, she would in a heartbeat. If dying meant saving her teammates' lives, she'd do it, no questions asked. His skills even surpass my own, Zabuza continued, and he bears within him the formidable legacy of an inherited Kekkei Genkai. I need to focus. His Kekkei Genkai, he said he needed the mirrors as his conduit, so without them he can't teleport. So to beat the technique, you have to break the mirrors, but how? They're made of ice but fire did nothing. What's the other way to break a mirror? Shanaru, that's easy. Punching it, dropping it, stabbing it, any blunt force really, duh. Quote, but they can't get close enough, and I'm not strong or fast enough to break it from the outside. Throughout her internal dialogue, Zabuza had continued to speak, boasting about Haku's deadly skill. Is there anything duller than listening to someone else brag? It's showtime, Kakashi declared, pushing Zabuza back a little and finally revealing his Sharingan. Perhaps you'll permit me one more boast. You turned a pretty phrase at our last encounter. Frankly, I've been dying to steal it. Sakura had a feeling she knew where this was going and she didn't like it. Something to the effect of, just so you know, the same spell won't work on me twice. Having had the chance to see it in action, I now have a thorough understanding of the arcane workings of your Sharingan. There was more to our previous battle than the apparently humiliating defeat I permitted you to hand me. Haku, who was hiding nearby, observed and studied every aspect of our fight, from beginning to end. Haku is extremely intelligent. For him to see a technique is to analyze and understand it. And with that understanding he can develop effective countermeasures. Quote, Kakashi's eyes bounced very briefly to Sakura. She was similar, but far less experienced and weaker. The potential was definitely there, but as of right now, Haku's insight would definitely trump hers. She knew it too. Damn it. That's my only calling card at the moment. That little punk has to take everything. Okay, thinking about beating his Kekkei Genkai's getting me nowhere, but I should be able to figure out his analyses, right? He was watching Kakashi-sensei's Sharingan. The Sharingan can copy anything it sees. How would you beat something like that? By playing hide and seek. For once her repressed thoughts actually seemed to be pitching in something useful. That piece of her was competitive, and more egocentric, so it didn't take well to being shown up at one of her few strengths. Unfortunately, she reached this conclusion too slow. Hidden mist jutsu. Fog began to slowly roll in an obscure Zabuza's form. Sensei. He's going to try to keep you from seeing him. He'll probably hide in the mist and attack from your blind spots. The last time he did this, he went directly for his real target, the bridge builder. She cast a very quick hesitant look at the mirror dome. There's nothing I can do for them, I can't even come up with anything. I'll just have to trust Sasuke-kun and Naruto, and focus on the mission. She wasted no more time in darting in front of Tazuna. Understood. Kakashi called, grateful and impressed with his student's quick reverse analysis and sense of duty. I'm counting on you to protect Tazuna. The fog was getting so thick, they could barely see their hands in front of their faces. Sakura could feel Tazuna's tension at her back. This air is charged with his energy. Stay by my side, Tazuna-san. All right, Sakura. The fog was so thick, she had no idea how Zabuza himself could see. She could no longer see her sensei, and tried to rely on her hearing to parse what was going on with their battle. Kakashi's ears jerked as he heard the faint whistling of several shuriken through the air. Managed to block them all, but jolted when he felt Zabuza's presence behind him. You repelled those nicely. No less than I'd expect from the great Kakashi of the sharing. However, the next time you see me it'll be the end. Kakashi looked at Zabuza, his body tense with adrenaline and anxiety. To his shock, the missing nin's eyes were closed. You've overestimated the value of your Sharingan. What? Zabuza laughed. You pretend it enables you to penetrate all, but you've turned out to be a false prophet after all. Kakashi. You can neither read my mind nor the future. In other words, your precious Sharingan is just an elaborate hoax, a confidence trick you play in order to psych out your opponents. More precisely, it combines clarity or perception and insight on your own part with the ability to all but hypnotize those around you. Using those skills in concert, you are able to create your illusions through a combination of mimicry, from movement to thoughts, to the skills of those you fight. Prancing around acting like you can see the future. Quote. Kakashi tensed even more. Zabuza's voice surrounded him in the fog, continuing to pick apart his impression of the Kakashi's visual jutsu. Sakura had been right. He was attempting to completely nullify Kakashi's eye by attacking from blind spots, reducing visibility, and giving him as little terrain as possible. You analyze my superficial movements, copy them, and use the rapidity of the turnaround to induce fear and insecurity. Once you're certain you understand what's going on in my heart and mind, you calculate just what to say to bend my mind to your will, and then, you calculate when my insecurities have reached their fever pitch, and you lay your trap. You use hypnosis to trick me into signaling what technique I'll use and how I'll be using it. Then all you have to do is mimic it. Is that right? There has to be more to it. That sounds like a trick anyone incredibly smart and observant could pull, without some special dujutsu. Sakura tensed, when she heard movement behind the wall of fog. Zabuza must have made some sort of move. Was Kakashi-sensei able to counter? How can he fight when he can't see anything? With my eyes closed, I eliminate the possibility of your hypnotizing me while we're in close proximity. But then, while I can't use my own eyes, you can't use yours either. Kakashi countered. Ah, but you forget, I am trained in the art of silent killing. My genius lies in the ability to hunt by sound alone. I almost forgot he's an assassin. If he's talking about hunting, his real target right now is. Sakura's eyes widened, her senses on high alert, her kunai tighter. She jolted when she heard the slow draw of metal from behind her and Tazuna. Damn, of course he'd attack from our blind spot as well. I have to move fast. She immediately placed one foot behind Tazuna and gracefully spun and pivoted so her small body blocked as much of his back as possible, her kunai held determinedly in front of her as she faced the assassin her sensei struggled to beat. Zabuza swung his heavy sword, and to her own frustration, she felt her eyes close in anticipation of the blade's sharp sting. But it never came. She opened her eyes to see Kakashi's green-vested back in front of her. He'd taken the hit for her, the same way Sasuke had been planning to when they'd been attacked by those Chunin. Once again, she was staring at a teammate's back because she wasn't strong enough to do anything. When she saw the blood dripping on the ground, she screamed. Blood was dripping down from his middle and onto the ground steadily. His wound was probably deep. And across the middle wasn't an ideal place to be hit, there were too many vitals that could have been damaged. Kakashi-sensei. He grunted, one hand pressing against the wide gash on his torso. You were slow on your guard, Kakashi. Even that inexperienced little girl was quicker than you this time. Your desire to save those brats caused the blood to rise to your head, obscuring your thoughts and vision as surely as the fog I've created does. Zabuza gave a low chuckle. I want to enjoy this, Kakashi. Paying back what you did to me would give me the greatest pleasure. Don't worry, Haku should be finishing off those brats of yours right about now. I'll be reuniting you with them shortly. When you meet them in the afterlife, beg them to forgive your weakness and folly. Zabuza burst into full dark laughter. Sakura felt a resurgence of her earlier burning rage. She might have been weak and incapable, but her team wasn't. Her voice took on the previous dark edge it had, as she stepped out a little from behind Kakashi. You seem to have memory problems. I already told you to stop underestimating my team. Sasuke-kun won't be easy for someone like that masked boy to kill. Neither will Naruto. Shanaru, you tell that eyebrow-less freak. Our team's gonna win no matter what. You're right, Sakura. As usual, Kakashi agreed. She had a tendency to be right frequently, even when she was only working with half the picture. I have faith in them and in their strengths. Naruto's unpredictability, and Sasuke is one of the most worthy heirs to the most superior bloodline of Konoha. Heir to a bloodline, Sasuke-kun has a Kekkei Genkai! Exclamation mark. The way Kakashi-sensei just talked about it, it's a powerful one too. Does he know he has one? He never mentioned or showed any special jutsu before. The proclamation seemed to surprise Zabuza as well. You don't mean. That's right, his full name is Uchiha Sasuke. He's a ninja genius who carries in his genes the Kekkei Genkai of the Uchiha clan. He's the sole surviving member of that tragic clan, huh? He cast a glance at the pink-haired girl next to Kakashi. She'd mentioned earlier that the members of her team had been through anguish. It seemed she hadn't been bluffing, at least, not about that boy. He had a hard time imagining the goofy blonde going through anything at all. And she was hard to read. Her long shiny pink hair and smooth pale skin didn't look like they'd seen any hardship, and she was clearly the weakest on her team. But the look in that kid's eyes, fine. He'd acknowledge that there was more to this group of brats than he'd initially believed. He may actually be Haku's equal. No one has ever penetrated the secret of Haku's techniques. Until now, no one. Zabuza faded back into the mist. He's gone again. Sakura, don't move an inch. I'll finish this as quickly as I can. Don't get in the way. Stay back. You can't handle this. You're too weak. Her mind continued to translate his statement into various negative implications. She was so frustrated by her inability. Not even Naruto or Sasuke-kun could take Zabuza. I know that. Sensei's having a hard time, but I can't even help them with Haku. I couldn't even do the one thing I'm good at and think of something useful. Why am I so useless? Quote. Despite her previous claims, she was incredibly worried about Sasuke and Naruto. The fog was too thick to see the mirror dome, and she was too far to hear anything going on inside it clearly. When she'd been closer to it, she could at least glean some of the situation inside, but now she had no idea. The only thing I know is that Naruto and Sasuke-kun aren't dead yet, otherwise Haku would be fighting with Zabuza, but just cause they aren't dead doesn't mean they're winning. Don't go flip-flopping now. Quote. I know, I can't do anything to help, the least I can do is have faith in them. That was easier thought than done. It was hard for her to have faith when things so rarely went well for her. Her father dying, the bullies at school, their lack of finances, her mother getting sicker and sicker, Even her, she knew it was her fault, but still, hell, even this mission was supposed to be simple with no fighting, but her luck managed to throw her and her team into the third deadly situation since they left their village. She didn't